plan prior to the issuance of a building permit.
Okay, now, I guess this is, in the landscape's confined to pretty much the front of the house because the back of the house is all wetland,
Yes, sir.
so can't plant
Back
there.
and to the side of the garage as well. From that lot line revision.
Right. Oh, wrong one. Okay. I think actually if we probably could leave this up to staff to look at when the final plan comes together. We're not looking at any kind of specific screening or any restorative or remedial planting. It's just kind of decorative more than anything. Is that what everybody's seeing?
Yes. Anybody else?
Here's a,
Okay, that's what I was waiting for. Okay, can you zoom me? So it's only that little area there.
Couple of plants near the front door, a little near the mud door, and some stuff adjacent to the driveway.
Correct. As well as with the driveway is going to be permeable, and there's Coltex also proposed if on the site plan. So even though it's an exemption, we're still treating the water.
Oh,
Mhm.
that's good.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah. You know how I feel about the drainage exemption. Okay. Any other comments from the commission? Any questions on this application?
Not at the moment.
All righty. Do I have any comments from the public? On this application, it's at 44 Cutler Road. I apologize. No? All righty. And with that, does anybody object to this application being closed? Okay, no objections to closing this application. This application is hereby closed. We will decide it later tonight. Mr. Basili, the public hearing is now over. Unless, Katie, do you want him to stay for any of the discussion items? No, right?
I don't think so, no.
Oh, I was hoping, but I will go. Okay.
We'll see you next time. Stay out
Okay.
of trouble.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, now we begin the discussion items. And our first item is Greenwich American Can Inc. I'm sorry, Mr. Liebman, I'll move you out. Our first application is Greenwich American Inc. for a pre-application review to create 456 units in 41 buildings in what is currently the BEX zone, which is a non-residential zone. Who's representing the applicant? Mr. Hegney? I
Yeah,
think
he's coming in right now.
Okay, thank you. And anybody else on your team, Mr. Hegney?
Yes, if you could bring Eric Zambell in from Granoff Architects.
Okay. Got him. All right.
And Marisa, if you could bring up the second slide, which is the topographic GIS. Great, thanks. Madam Chair, are you ready for us?
We are ready. I announced you. I'm ready.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the commission. For the record, Tom Hegney on behalf of the applicant. This is a truly unique site for Greenwich. You can't get there from here without going into New York. And it is separated from the rest of the town by I-684 and is in the very northwest corner of the town. It has a building that was constructed by American Can as its world headquarters in 1968 and was used up until the 80s, at which time the then owners of the building were looking to create multi-tenant spaces there. And there was a bit of a disagreement on the part of the commission, and it went to the Connecticut Supreme Court, and there was a decision that ultimately was ratified by the commission through a decision in 1991 to permit multiple tenants. I know that because I was the one that made the motion on the commission to approve it as such. In 2019, the commission also saw this and changed the wording of the BEX 50 zone from executive office just to office. If you've had a chance to get out there, it's a beautiful piece of property, rolling hills with lawn and woodlands. This is a 154-acre site. It has a 600,000 square foot, roughly, office space on it. It has its own wells, and it has its own wastewater treatment plant, which runs along 684 in the upper right-hand corner of the site. So we do not border New York on all two sides, just on one, and that would be the westerly side, which is to the left-hand side of the GIS map. IBM, which has its world headquarters just north in New York, owns the northern part of this BEX 50 zone, which is an additional 62 acres and is currently vacant land. If we could go to the next slide, please, Marisa. So here you can see that we have the Tamarack golf course to the east on the other side of 684. And you get the real view of all of the portions of the land that are really very open, with some specimen trees and open lawn areas. If we could go to the next one, please, Marisa. So this is a little bit reoriented. So rather than running north on the top of the page, it's really
we figured it out.
or to the right. I
Yep.
realized that was a bit confusing yesterday.
No,
So
we got it. We're not as dumb as we look. We all figured it out over the weekend.
I knew you would.
Thank you.
So the red line is the property line of the 154 acres. As you can see here, we don't actually border very much on King Street itself. And this is the King Street that runs up on the western end of town and then crosses over 684.
Yeah, we live here.
And yeah, well, that's good. And I hope you've all had a chance to get out to the site, because it really is a spectacular piece of property.
No, you're going to take us on a site walk eventually. Do you want to?
I look forward to that. So let me just make a couple of points.
Okay.
We have a facility for Citigroup, which is between King Street and both the state line and our property line on the westerly side of the property. Then we have Swiss Re just to the northwest and IBM to the north. There's also a fairly large solar array that doesn't show up on this, which is also on the westerly side of King Street. So it's really quite an amazing piece of property, and one that we're looking to enhance. The town of North Castle, which is what borders the property, sent what I would describe as a very comprehensive letter that was reviewed by their town board and was authored by Adam Kaufman, who is the town planner of North Castle. I reviewed not only the letter, but also the town board meeting, which occurred earlier this month. The primary concerns that were expressed both in the letter and by the members of the board at their meeting.
Share down just for a sec so we can see Mr. Hegney, and then he can talk to us about the concerns. Yes.
Thank you. So the primary concerns are traffic and parking. Because the traffic impacts are not really on Greenwich. They're really in New York and on the intersections in New York. To that end, we have hired Bernie Adler as our traffic consultant to do a study. He's been waiting for everyone to come back from Disney World. So this week he started the traffic counts.
Yes.
And yeah, well, that's a whole nother discussion, Madam Chair. We'll get into that, not at a meeting though. He had done a similar study in 2019, and many of the intersections that he studied then are involved now. And he's going to be preparing that and have that for us, because that's obviously a concern and something that we do need to address. The parking in Armonk is certainly an interest. They have a great mix of shops and restaurants. And it certainly is an attractive place where people living on this property would go. I was wondering though how long it took to get to the Stop and Shop in Glenville. So I started in Glenville right in front of the Stop and Shop and drove up. It took me 9 minutes to get to this property. Then I said, well, how long is it going to take me to get to the Seacoast Market in Armonk, which is like Cittarella's or Balducci's? And that took me 6 minutes. Now I also looked, although I didn't do the travel on it, at Wegmans, which is in Purchase, which is right near Manhattanville College. So although I think we have to look at what the potential parking impacts could be on Armonk, I think there are many other opportunities for people that would be living here to shop. And certainly you want to have business, you just don't want too much business. And that's the balancing act that all towns have to deal with. One of the things I wanted to add about the traffic was adding residential to the property is really complementary with the office because they're going in opposite directions. So they're not burdening the same intersections in the same way. And it's something that I think we will be borne out by Mr. Adler's traffic study. So the other concerns that were expressed were environmental impacts. And one of the big ones, obviously, is how do you provide water for these many dwellings, and how do you handle wastewater? SE Minor actually did the study and the design of the wells and the wastewater treatment plant in the 60s. And although it's not the same people that are doing the review now, they do have the records in their files and went back and did an initial analysis that showed that there is more than enough well water available, and that the sewer plant actually has capacity to deal with much more than what it has now.
But that's the question. So if we could just, the way we were saying this yesterday, and I think you heard us say it, the infrastructure burden is going to be on North Castle. You're going to have to satisfy North Castle that you're not putting demand on their public water, that your septic is sufficient, your on-site sewage treatment is sufficient, and that your well water will meet it. You may have excess capacity today, they want to know, and those are their questions. All the infrastructure burden really falls on them except for the schools. And again, that would come to us. The issues that come to us that I think have been salient to the commission, the first one that we asked loud and clear yesterday was, we would like to see a below market component on this.
Well, I was going to get to that later in my remarks, but I
well,
can
I know,
certainly-
this
Get
is
to
a
it now.
pre-app and it was sounding like it was going to turn into a 2-hour discussion. So I was trying to get it shorter. One of the commissioners did in fact ask if we could keep to our pre-app promises. So in keeping with that, we wanted to give you the key issues that emerged as we looked at this.
And I certainly want to hear that from you.
Side by side with us wanting some below market housing. And by the way, there's several different takes on that you'll hear from the commission suggesting to you. There's another concern as I spent time looking at the little boxes you have there. I see this as being a relatively dense, if not too dense a development. I see it as being perhaps more than makes sense for the site. So my question to you would be, not for right now, but when you come back with a fleshed out site plan, why does it need to be 456? Why is it so big? Were you potentially assuming that you would need that kind of density for below market to include the below market? Don't answer that now. But looking at it, I think it's too much what you're adding. That's just my take as I played with it over the weekend and last night. My own personal perspective, I would like to have that question answered. Options you would give us on affordability, and I'm going to ask the commission to ask you those questions because I know each person has a different view on it. And the infrastructure demand, other than the schools and potentially us having to craft a mutual aid agreement with Armonk or North Castle on fire. And I believe we may be able to support the fire. That would be a call. All those issues need to be ironed out, but I see it as mostly being on the vicinities that will be impacted. So those are my 3 things. I'm sorry I took so long to say it. What about, so I was trying to get this short for you, Mr. Hegney, just because it is a pre-app, give you the major issues. And go ahead, folks, questions.
Mr. Hagney, just I think my concern actually was this. The houses are kind of all over the place, all over the site. Ms. Alban had kind of touched on things at 456 units. If a lesser amount could be used and get them away from being completely surrounding the building, the existing building, the building itself, it's my understanding actually may have won an award at one time long ago. But it just seems that everything seemed to be crowded against the building as opposed to the building still existing as a kind of a focal point of the site. And then just looking at how things are placed out, I mean, there was a cooling, a cooling tower campus below the garage doors, the garage ramps, and there were houses on top of that. It's those things, are you going to move that whole cooling system to put in houses? And the other one, the site cooling system that's way out on the site, there seem to be a couple of houses that are out there right on top of that. And I think actually understanding, and I'm sure you heard this yesterday, is can that system, the sewage treatment plant as it exists, handle the system with more bedrooms? I know because actually the building we were talking about is not occupied right now, but if it's reoccupied and you're adding all of that on top, can it handle it? Or does it need to be fixed or upgraded or enhanced somehow to handle what's being proposed here? And I think that affordability thing, I think I actually kind of understanding when you're saying starter home, kind of getting not really into the weeds, but what does that actually mean? If you were telling me what is a starter home, kind of ballpark in terms of figures and what that means when I say I'm going to buy one of these, what do I get as a starter home? So I think those are my the big 3 or 4 that I had.
Okay.
Thanks.
Mr. Yeski had his hand up next.
Yeah, no, I think you're hitting many of them. I guess I have been to this site often. We rented it back in the 90s. And I've been back there for a couple of the meetings. So I'm familiar. I'm also familiar with the developer. And I'm very familiar with these kinds of projects in different parts of the country. It's a big project, and I agree it's very dense. And I'm hoping we will get below market, although it's a little tricky because this is not really close to any kind of public transportation other than the airport, which I don't think is what we have in mind. I guess my one question right out of the box is, are you, Mr. Hegney, are you planning to go to the town of North Castle and do the same kind of, I understand legally it's Greenwich, but as our chair lady has said, most of this is the North Castle. Are you planning to go meet with them, describe what you have in mind, use the same documents, try to get them to understand all of this? Or what is your plan? It's a kind of a unique situation, 2 states, 2 towns, but most of the impact is on North Castle. Is that the plan, or are you just going to rely on Greenwich judgment?
What I told Adam Kaufman when I spoke with him last week was that I thought that the issues that they raised in their letter that they sent to you were valid ones that we would address, and that as we worked on our plan, we would stay in touch with them. If he feels that it's helpful to meet with the town board in North Castle, we're happy to do that.
Well,
we understand their concerns, and we think we can address them.
I'd like you to do one better. I think we could figure out how to do this legally. I would like to be inclusive. I'd be interested in being joint with North Castle, and maybe we are an audience. P&Z is an audience when you present to them, but I would like to be respectful. This is a large development that is going to impact an adjoining community, and I'd like to be as inclusive and respectful of that community situation as we can legally be. I believe that in Zoom world, we have a fantastic opportunity because we can public notice a meeting. They don't have to drive anywhere. And maybe we could do this somehow. We could hear their concerns. Katie, I'm just like looking for ways of doing this, but I feel like we should work with them to get to a solution somehow, or at least have them be the panelists and we hear where they get to, or whatever works. But I think, we should work with our neighbors.
I know that Mr. Kaufman was planning on attending this meeting this evening, and I know that they did discuss it at
I see him there.
April board meeting, and some of the members were going to try to attend here as well. So I think we're close to that already.
Okay.
And certainly can work with that.
If
Yeah,
Katie could work with them, go ahead, Katie.
Yeah, legally, I think it would make me comfortable to set that up as a pre-application on our end. Obviously, North Castle can call it whatever they want, but I would like to notice it and have it set up that way, just so that we don't run into any trouble.
Whatever works. I think as long as we're completely transparent, it's public meeting, everybody's invited, and somehow or other, everybody gets to hear the concerns, because us doing a development that places the burden on them, we should hear their concerns. We should work with them and figure it all out together so that we get to an optimal solution. And in saying that, Mr. Hegney, you know that we've put in the plan of our plan of conservation of development that we need a greater variety of homes, a diversity of the type of home Greenwich offers, and that it sounds like your project may be giving us that. Now, to the question that the questions Nick and Dennis were asking you, I'm curious what you mean by starter home, because if you're talking about $3 million houses, you're not doing much in terms of our POCD. What we're looking for is what could a younger family, truly a starter home. The average price of a home in Greenwich is $3 million. If you're looking in that price range, you're not really helping us out here. But I'd love to give it, so it's probably consistent with our POCD, but I would like to make sure that our neighbors are okay with it.
I think even here, having a $3 million price tag would be stretching starter home.
Okay, good. That's what we were trying to ask you politely.
Remove a zero, you might get there.
Okay, Mr. Wells has, yeah.
Yeah,
Mr. Wells
just to drill down a bit more on the affordable housing part, which both Madam Chair and Dennis have mentioned, just just looking at the numbers, a project with 450 units puts a additional requirement on the town of Greenwich to make 45 affordable units. So if you aren't helping towards that, that burden is shifted 100% towards the town. As you know, we're already 5% behind where we need to be. We need to have 1,200 more. So this just adds to our burden. So I think it's going to make it a lot less attractive to town. Yes, we need starter homes, but more than that, we need affordable starter homes. So affordable housing needs to be front and center in this project and cannot be swept to the side. Thank you.
And while we're on that, just quickly, since we were talking about our POCD, and since Mr. Kaufman is listening, I would love to get a hold of any planning documents that North Castle has, so we know what their strategy is for development. And in that way, we can be more sensitive to the concerns that they might have. Okay, what else, folks? And Mr. Kaufman has his hand up. So Dennis, go ahead. We'll let the public speak in a minute, Mr. Kaufman. Go ahead, Dennis.
Yeah, my next concern was, and I think it's along the same lines as you have, Madam Chairwoman. This is a unique situation. We have a DPW department. Now I hear it's well water. That's Greenwich, I think, although wells have a way of going to New York.
It's groundwater, and so it's a joint thing. We all
Right.
share water across the area.
And that's my point. And maybe this is a question to Katie, but is there some way to get our departments to work with the North Castle departments before we see this again? It'd be nice to have technical people agreeing on what some of the possible solutions are, as opposed to us arguing it in a commission meeting and getting caught in the middle. So I don't know whether I'm making myself clear, but
Absolutely.
yeah, this is a wonderful chance to have the technicians work on these, so you come back with solutions, as opposed to the developer has a solution and now we have to run around and try to figure out if we have experts and that sort of thing. I think we've got the time. It's a pre-app, and I'd love to see this this would be a wonderful collaborative event, as you pointed out. I mean, you've already mentioned this, but it's beyond just the developer. It's like we have a lot of technical expertise, and we would like to work with the North Castle people to kind of jointly come up with our opinions on these things.
Yeah, and we have our ex-BET chair sent Katie, I forwarded it to you, a long email today with comments. And so things like that, we're going to get a lot of comments from within the community.
So Mr. Yeski's saying a joint meeting with the respective town departments from both communities
Yeah.
before the joint meeting with the commissions from both.
Or whatever works for you guys. Dennis was saying, have your people talk to my people. But seriously, that's how he said it yesterday. And we all laughed. But, whatever works best for you, our town planner, and for their town planner. That whatever process works best for the two of you. I think that's the way to look at it.
May I read these comments from Mr. Mason, since you brought them up? I think we should put them on the record.
Yeah, he has not, I didn't read them because I answered him that we would need to put them in the record and that I was forwarding them to you. And
Yeah,
he did not authorize me to put them in the record. I'm just mentioning that we're getting comments, but I have not seen them because I wasn't authorized to put them in the record.
Oh,
Interesting.
okay.
Well,
Well,
he
So we're not
doesn't
allowed to
always,
hear-
he doesn't always answer his emails. He may write back tomorrow. In the meantime, Katie has it and I haven't read it.
I mean, they're pretty, they're just comments.
Okay,
that we
then go right
discussed
ahead.
already. So,
Then go right
Um,
ahead.
there's no fire back there, in quotes. So a couple of thoughts: within 1 mile of that property, there's over 1.5 million square feet of commercial office space. They have no fire coverage either. That's not true. He writes, so Greenwich P&Z should mandate a water supply for fire suppression. We should mandate sprinklers in all the buildings. P&Z should mandate backup electrical power, not just for pumps and lighting, but for the property only has one egress point currently. The Round Hill fire station is 2.6 miles away. However, the shortest path is 5.6 miles. Glenville is only X ? Miles away. The Board of Ed has a school bus study. They also have maximum ride time guidelines. What will be the estimated ride times to Western or Greenwich High School? The airport, this property will be 500 to 800 feet east of the center line for runway 16 to 34, which is the main runway. Aircraft will be descending or climbing when next to this property. Belfair actually had the FAA go on record against that development, so a question about that. And then lastly, ground lighting. There needs to be a ruling from the FAA on lighting limitations. Obviously, there would have to be obstruction lighting. I'm sure there will be a concern that certain lighting might be considered runway environment lighting, a technical term. However, there is lighting that gives pilots the opportunity to decide if they can discontinue the instrument approach and fly visually to land. Landing to the south at Westchester Airport is 200 feet above the ground. Citigroup's conference center is a good place to review what might be needed. They are 1 mile directly in line with the runway.
It sounds like Mr. Mason is bringing another party in, which is the FAA, which could be a kill factor in this project.
And Mr. Mason should know about that.
Yeah, he owns a fixed base
Okay,
operator at Westchester.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks, Katie, for that.
But I have a couple, well, not to extend, but I'm just curious in one thing, Mr. Hegney, are these units for rent or are they going to be sold to people
The plan would be to have them for sale.
for sale? So this is a condo project.
Well, we're thinking of it as townhouses, starter home townhouses. That's how we're
And what's the average
describing
square foot in these?
there's no average. They range from 1,000 square feet for the smaller two bedroom up to 3,400 square feet for a 3-bedroom.
So these are going to be north of 750,000 and probably $1.5 million. So I think just reinforcing, and that doesn't count the land. So yeah, it could be even more, but it is dense. So that's one way to keep the cost down, but it's still not going to be, I don't know what people think of a starter home. It's not the average price in Greenwich. It's way below that, but it's interesting. Okay, well, we could go on and on and on. I think we've made our points, right?
And I appreciate you doing most of the talking because that's where I think the value of these pre-apps is.
I'll give you one good thing. I know the developer. It was a client, not anymore. I have no contact, no conflict. But they're a world-class developer. So a lot of what we're talking about here, I think, is going to be familiar with them. These people are Tishman Speyer. Tishman Speyer is the developer, right? Is that what I read? Yeah.
Yes.
For those who don't know Tishman Speyer, they own a lot of property in New York. They develop. They're huge developers in New York City. When I dealt with them, they own Rockefeller Center. They own lots of buildings. So this is a world-class organization too. So all the stuff we're talking about should not be much of a burden. Sometimes we hear, oh, you're asking too much. Well, this is not a little family business, let's put it that way. So, and it's a big project. So it kind of throws the whole thing into a more professional, more detailed stage that we shouldn't be reluctant to ask for things we think are appropriate because these folks are really world-class developers. And we don't get that all the time. We get a lot of developers, but this is in a whole nother league.
Okay, well, it's good to know.
I would agree
Mr.
with that.
Baerleck?
I just wanted to make one suggestion to Mr. Hagney to think about with his clients, and that is that to consider what benefit to the development the Affordable Housing Trust Fund that we just created might have. And I mean that not limited to the concept of a loan or other funding from the fund, but because the fund is going to embark on a study of other ways that Greenwich could offer appropriate financial support to developers that benefit them tremendously and greatly increase the town's progress towards the affordable housing goals. I don't want to spend a lot of time here talking about it, but would suggest that if there's any interest in your client's part, talk to Katie about it. She's connected with that. Put her in touch. She can put your clients in touch with me or other folks who can add details.
Okay.
Peter Lowe, I think.
Peter Lowe.
Yeah, I was going to ask this earlier, but we brought up the airport. I wondered what, if any, are the concerns of the applicant regarding this development's proximity to Westchester Airport?
You know, other than the convenience of travel.
Well, I don't know how many people in a starter home, Mr. Hegney, are going to be jumping on their private plane, but maybe there'll be lots.
You know, I'm on the other end of the flight pattern coming in from the south. You know, yeah, there are a lot of NetJet flights coming in on Sunday afternoons. But you know, I see a lot of JetBlue and Delta as well. And having the airport there is a concern because of the air traffic and the overall traffic. But it's also a benefit having it close by to travel conveniently and to a very great extent inexpensively to places particularly south. But we have done a preliminary study and reviewed it with the FAA. We do not believe that what we're proposing here poses any issue with the airport or the FAA. But it's certainly something that we will confirm and verify as part of moving.
Yeah, I think it would be important as you move forward to flesh out the potential impact that airport. Obviously, it'll be taken into account in terms of marketing these units too. But that's not our concern.
Yeah, I have to say, you have the Belfair development, which is on King Street. Literally across the street from Greenwich, where Greenwich Woods nursing home is, and that's literally underneath the landing pattern for planes coming in from the south, and I think that's been a successful one. And here, the planes would not be flying overhead, but they do fly.
Maybe some of those people are hearing impaired to some degree.
Hopefully not from the airplanes landing over there.
Oh, it probably will help them. Yeah, I got it.
Mr. Hegney, I'm just going to go down to the little bit in the weeds here.
Please.
You've got the commercial office space number that you give here is only for the existing commercial, right? But you must have a plan to have additional retail. Isn't there a plan for some retail on site?
That's something that we've been discussing. Is not firmed or set up yet. We do not have it on the plan that we are sharing with you this evening.
Okay, so when you talk about having the total square footage of 1.8 million, you're considering with only the 586 of office, that may actually shift a little bit in its mix. The other thing was, I'm not sure, and your total FAR, which you're going to request that the zone allow 0.3, and you're going to
Yes,
request
that's what we're suggesting.
0.26. I would look at when you justify that zone creation, think about what we would do in cluster zone in the RA4. You've got a big conservation area, what you would be doing in a cluster zone, because I'd like to have some analysis of what you're proposing in terms of the 0.26 overall FAR and why you think that would be a suitable number and why this new zone should be at 0.3 max, which would give you room to expand. I'd like to have some thought on how you believe that's consistent with our own RA4 uses right now, et cetera. And what we do in the clusters or other multi-unit ability in certain zones. Just like you to think that through in terms of a comparison. You don't have to do it now, but when you're coming in, It's tell us why this is a good FAR number.
So I want to just give you initial thoughts on that.
Okay,
Yeah, I think this is, besides being a unique opportunity, is a unique property.
absolutely.
And because of its location,
Mhm.
and you have a different zone, the BEX 50 zone. There isn't going to be another BEX 50 zone anywhere else in town.
No, and we
It's
don't
just
have
here.
large swaths of land left either. So
True.
that
I'm sorry. Please.
so what I'm thinking about is our focus is going to be exactly, this is a unique property, to explain to us why this is highest and best use, and therefore, which is what we have to decide with this reg, and then why you think the 0.3 is appropriate relative to other potential numbers and uses. Go ahead, I interrupted you.
So although the next closest zone is the RA4, this is a commercial zone that it's in now. I was looking at the other commercial zones we have in town. We have the LBR1, which has a 0.3 FAR, and we have the CGB that is also a 0.3. And those are the lowest FAR limitations that we have in the commercial zone. So that's why I started with that. I thought that was more appropriate than looking at the RA4, even though you're correct, we have 45 acres that are set aside as conservation area, which we are not looking to have any impact on at all. But I saw this more as dealing with it as commercial property where you're looking to have some kind of residential component with it. I thought that that's why the 0.3 was the more appropriate approach to take.
Okay. Comments, anybody?
Well, Mr. Hagney, I'm looking forward to learning more about what makes this a community and neighborhood, and what kind of mix is the result of that. Mixed uses, retail, commercial, residential, and what are the things that tie it together, and would it be attractive to, say, young families and others. Also very interested in understanding how you kind of create, you zone this property so that it makes sense how that where you have retail, I mean, where you have the residential and where the office park is, because right now there's no real clarity with the limited information you've given us. So that will be an interesting kind of development of this project to create that kind of clarity and that kind of interest in the property.
I just have three quick questions. Oh, Mr. Hagney, looks like you wanted to answer that.
Well, I was just looking for a bit of a clarification from Mr. Levy. So are you speaking about how the residential would relate to the office space and the office uses on the campus? Is that what you're?
Well, it's not so much relate,
looking
but maybe, I don't know if that's the right word or not, because right now it looks like you have housing right next to offices. So what is it that defines the neighborhood? The neighborhood is made up of different things going on. So what separates it? What connects them? What makes it seem like a community? How does the office park relate? Is this going to be worker housing for the office tenants? I don't think so. So just curious to see how that develops and how you separate one from the other, because they are, although they're in tandem, they are not so much related as far as how people will be, on the site. There'll be different groups using each of these different uses. And so how does it come and go, and how do these things work all together? So that'll be an interesting thing to give us a sense of.
All right, thank you for clarifying.
Mr. Hegney, do you have any idea how many acres Belfair is?
I don't, but I can certainly check on that.
Because I think they have around 260 units. So it'd be interesting to make a comparison since it's been mentioned as a comparable development.
I think the site is significantly smaller though.
Okay, well, that's what I was interested in. It'd be an
There's the
interesting,
density there.
yeah, so we could compare. It would
but
give
Did you,
us,
did anybody mention schools?
yes, we did, but
Okay.
you can touch on it. And also, Katie's mentioned it, I think, but, oh, and Mike Mason mentioned it. It's been brought up and schools are an issue. One of the questions is it's which school? And I think Mr. Hegney says, well, you're 9 minutes to Glenville. Is that the closest one?
In looking at the Board of Ed breakdown of areas, this would be in Parkway.
This would be Parkway. Well, that would be good news.
It's an underpopulated school currently.
It's an underpopulated school, so that would be good news. So,
Yeah, but
and that-
Parkway would feed into Western, and what did you say? It was 6 minutes or 9 minutes to Glenville?
to Glenville.
So then add another 2 on a bus. Well, actually, much more than that to get there. So this would be out of it'd be their catchment zone, but out of the, or in the busing.
hmm
So if you're picking up, say you're picking up even just 3 stops between here and Western Middle School, that could be quite a long ride.
So there's another issue to address is the schools. What else, you guys? What other questions? Your major topics?
Three quick ones. The site has been before the commission relatively recently to talk about the weak office market. And so the question is the office being proposed to be converted to retail, or is there an opportunity to do a different type of housing within the office building itself? That kind of speaks to the affordable housing component. Second of all, is the parkland open space area. Oh, excuse me. One other thing is potentially the Stone House could be converted to housing, potentially affordable housing, thinking smaller units there. And second of all is the park space in the back with the trails and whatever. Is that open to the public, or could there be something done there as an amenity to the town to open that up to the public, kind of like PepsiCo Gardens or something along those lines? And then lastly, this is a procedural question. You're suggesting that the way to go about this is to amend the BEX 50 zoning, and that may be the correct way. But other opportunities might be to include the BEX 50 in the moderate income dwelling unit regulations. And if that was the case, that would probably dramatically change your application. But I was wondering if you've studied that yet, and what that might mean. And there might be other ways that one could go about this to get housing on that property. So that would be something to consider as we move forward also.
Go ahead, Mr. Hegney. We're actually going to let you talk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the trails are basically open to the public now. I didn't ask anyone when I went up on a Sunday afternoon and walked around on the trails and through the property. I think the office market here for this building is not as weak as it might be in other places. And so certainly something I can discuss with the client. But that was not part of our initial thought. Certainly something we can consider. And rather than lumping this in with all the other commercial zones, which are basically along the post road in town, I thought that the approach here from a planning standpoint was to treat it as the unique entity it is, and look to modify the BEX 50 zone rather than to include it in 6110, where we're dealing with our 5 of our other commercial zones.
I guess what we're trying to say to you is, this is the conversation the commission had yesterday about below market options, moderate income, 80% of area median income, affordable, as defined by the state, which is 80% of SMI and lower, deed restricted, all of that. What would you, we're trying to really, I think what Katie might have been trying to do is give you the flexibility to choose an affordability path that works. Obviously, you know, we don't want to get 456 units and not give people some diversity in terms of pricing.
And you're seeing a lot of projects these days that have the affordable component under 8-30G.
And not under
there-
6110.
No, and you have one coming up soon that is under 6110.
Okay.
And I think, you know, it was the discussion that you had over the 18 months of the moratorium on 6110. And maybe it's worth looking at that again, because I think that's part of what has shifted it over to the 8-30G. But the other thing that's created that shift is you have the economics now.
I know.
The market rate units are selling and renting for such large numbers
We know.
that you can now afford to subsidize the other 30.
So the
So,
model, right, and we know that the
But
model
here, I'm sorry, go ahead.
go ahead. I interrupted you
So,
first.
so here we're looking at really a completely different model. We're not looking at the affordable. We're not looking at the high end, which is also having a great amount of development going on. We're looking at that in between. And really, when we're talking about the starter home, we're talking about the Havemeyer Park concept that came in after World War II, where we have all the streets named after admirals and generals. That there is a real need,
yes,
for people to come in and feel that there is something that is not
affordable.
Not affordable, but is something that they can afford.
Yes, but your builders, your people are going to be familiar. So when we were working on 6110, it turned out that both Katie and I knew a lot about inclusionary zoning in Maryland. Okay, and it turned out, for strange reasons, we were both very aware of it, and inclusionary zoning in Maryland would take a project exactly like this and require X amount of it to be below market. Now, I would have said to you, those were not on average starter homes. They would be in many cases upper middle, but any large development had a required inclusionary percent. And Katie, when had we first come across that? Probably we both first saw it 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Maryland led the way in that, and we had both been studying it way back before. Well, she was already a planner. I wasn't doing this yet, and I was interested in how this worked. So just consider that the model is out there for inclusionary zoning in a development this size, and how would you structure that? And, you know, we'd like to see 830G, because otherwise you're pushing our denominator way up, but just to be really tacky about it. But at the same time, we know we need a diversity of prices.
And that's really what we're looking to provide here. And we can certainly look at the things that have come up as part of the discussion this evening. But it's fitting in between the affordable moderate, but not the $3 million, and in between where there's a market, a need, and a desire for people to come into town.
Right. Does anybody else? Oh, Dennis, go ahead.
Well, I don't know whether we want to elongate it. This is a pre-app, right? But
yeah, and I wanted to bring in the town planner from North Castle.
Okay, just one comment. You know, if you're talking 6110, Katie, what's the maximum you can earn to be in moderate income? It's like 130 some thousand, right?
Yeah.
No, it's not. It's like 99,000, somewhere around there.
Family of 4.
Oh, well, that's for single persons at around 99.
Yeah, I think a family of 4, you're about right, Dennis.
Yeah, it'd be higher.
Bob or I can find that that spreadsheet. I think we keep it written into our palms most of the time, don't we?
Yeah, well, we can go into it, but at
Right.
moderate income, I don't know, just looking at some of the numbers, it's going to be hard pressed. So it's nice to say you want diversity, but I don't think even moderate income would be able to afford these units. But let's see what their numbers are and just end it there. If you've got the supervisor from North Castle, that's very interesting.
Okay. All right. So are you guys questioned out for the moment, and we can
I
hear
think we
from-
should go on.
Okay, so we're going to open it to the public, and the first person who has his hand up is Adam Kaufman from North Castle. And Mr. Where did he go? There he is. Whew, that took a really long time. Hello.
Hello. Hi. Thank you for, I had a blank screen for a minute, but I think I'm on now, right?
Yeah, you're on.
All right. Thank you. I just wanted to take this opportunity so you could put a name to a face to a name. I'm Adam Kaufman. I'm the Director of Planning for the town of North Castle. I'd like to express my thanks for taking our considerations or our concerns into under consideration. As you stated before, a lot of the impacts on this development are going to be borne by the town of North Castle. We would appreciate any opportunities to participate in this review, however you deem fit. Since we have no approval authority, we are relying on the town of Greenwich to make the appropriate decisions for the future of this project. I'm happy to coordinate directly with your staff or your
With Katie.
commission into the future.
It would be
fantastic.
great if you could talk with Katie and you all could figure out how to do this. So you've met Katie DeLuca, our town planner?
I have tonight, yes. We've
Yes.
had written communication, but it's the first time in person.
She walks on water. And and whatever you and she work out, we'd be good with. I'm going to be very truthful here. We are particularly sympathetic to you because Portchester never listens to us. And we don't want to be that person. Portchester's developments impact us a great deal, but they've got a mission and they're putting it first. And I don't want to do that to North Castle. I want to be fully respectful of your town plan, what your concerns are, and how we can address them in a way that suits you, that satisfies you.
Thank you very much. We look forward to working with you.
And do you have a town plan that you can send Katie?
Yes, of course. I'll send her an email tomorrow with that link.
Fantastic. Yeah, we'd love to see that. Commissioners, do you have questions for Mr. Kaufman? Dennis is thinking. Unmute yourself.
Or not.
Yeah, I've got a lot of questions, but I think Mr. Kaufman heard that we're going to work collaboratively with him. There's all kinds of issues. I think they're going to have to think about the own services they're going to have to, like police occur to me. Can our police even get up there?
Yeah, if I could address that, there was some discussion about potentially having an agreement with the town of North Castle and the Armonk Fire Department. That's going to be a critical issue. We're an all volunteer, the Armonk Fire Department's an all volunteer fire department. They're stretched pretty thin as it is. So if the town of Greenwich cannot serve that property, that will have to be worked out and will be a significant issue.
There's lots of questions like that I'm looking forward to working with you about.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Okay, well, we want to see your plan, and I've got your 8-page letter sitting right here next to me. And I think that would be great. If nobody else has questions for you,
Well, just briefly, Mr. Kaufman, what do you think is, your list of concern questions? What
Traffic impact on the roads obviously is number one. I think given the geography, I think people are going to gravitate to the Armonk Hamlet. It might be similar travel times to other parts of Greenwich, but it is so close and easy to get to the Armonk Hamlet. I believe that's where people are going to gravitate to. We do have a parking study, which I'll share with Katie on the constraints in our hamlet. The town is acquiring additional property to build some additional parking, but that's to satisfy existing demand. And if we're bringing in 400 or so new households that could potentially be coming to the hamlet, we need to plan for that and understand what those impacts are. I think those are the big impacts for us.
Yeah, and our big concern for you was that this development is planning on doing on-site sewer treatment and well water, but it's you all that would bear that burden if that didn't work out. So we'd like to make sure that on an infrastructure basis, that fire, police, all of those things are satisfied. Obviously, traffic is a concern. And I think the noise impact from the airport is mostly going to be the buyer's question. But those infrastructure, Dennis, go ahead.
I can't help myself.
That's why we love you.
Well, I was just curious, are there other major developments that you know of in Armonk, North Castle, that whole area? For example, IBM is based there and they're trying to expand. Are other people talking about expanding their operations up in your area?
Yes, absolutely. The challenges that this property is facing is similar to other properties. So across the street, it's a property called Airport Campus. They're currently in front of the town board to also permit residential uses. And on some excess land across on what was formerly IBM's property, they sold it on Route 22. There's a hotel and some multifamily development that's going to be occurring. So we understand and appreciate the challenges of these corporate campuses. And you'll see in our comprehensive plan, we permit alternative uses. I think it's the density, getting a good site plan, and then addressing the impacts is really getting into the nuts and bolts of what's appropriate on a specific site.
One last question, I promise. Do you interact with the airport much? They're talking about expanding the airport, or they're doing some major new development study to do something about the airport. Do you routinely deal with the airport?
No, there's a committee in our town that deals with the airport, and Westchester County, I know, is doing those studies. I'm not that familiar with that study.
Mr. Kaufman, can you provide Mrs. DeLuca any background on those developments you've just mentioned, just for our reference?
Yes, of course.
Are you still
Great,
on
thank you.
Zoom? Are you still on Zoom for your hearings?
We are not on Zoom. No.
So you've
Sometimes
gone in-
it's a hybrid meeting.
Okay, if you have a hearing, if you've got material where we could inform ourselves on the development you're dealing with in your area, that would help us look at the broader picture.
Sure, I'll say that with a caveat that those projects specifically across the street are not approved, and there are it's under review.
So if you have a hybrid meeting, if you can send the information to Katie, we could always listen.
Of course, yes, we can arrange for that.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great. And we could listen in, and then we could get a sense of what is of what your general development is looking like, so we get a sense of the context of the impact for you in terms of demands on your infrastructure, et cetera.
Sure.
Okay. So to be continued. Thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Does anybody else from the public wish to speak on this application? This is American Can.
Pre-app.
Pre-app. So good having. Anybody else from the public wish to speak on the American Can application? No. Okay, so we can move on to our next discussion item.
Madam
Which is
Chair, I just
dinner,
wanted,
right?
Oh, sorry.
I second Aaron's suggestion.
in the first last few minutes we have before your 7 o'clock break. My thought was,
Thought I was done with you,
after
Mr.
this
Hagney.
discussion, oh, never, that we would continue this as a pre-app rather than us coming in with something else.
Totally and absolutely.
You have a good number of questions and
Yes.
issues that you want us to address. I'd like to do those in this pre-app setting
Yes.
rather than going farther in
Yeah,
terms of
and
development.
and we've asked you a lot of questions that you can answer without doing a full set of plans, and that's what we'd like you to do. Don't do a full set of plans till we fleshed out a lot of issues.
Yeah, that's, and, I hope you had an opportunity to look at some of the material we submitted that was part of our presentation.
Yes.
That really gives you a feel for this property and the opportunities that are there.
Yeah.
Would you be thinking, Mr. Hegney, that you would want, I'm just thinking scheduling now, that you'd want to come back to the commission with some of these questions answered, or with some different types of plans, or would you like us to proceed with getting this kind of staff meeting thing going between the communities?
I'd like to do that in parallel, Katie.
Okay.
So that we move ahead with having our town departments work with North Castle, and that you work with Adam, and I'm more than happy to participate in that as well, along with Eric. And then we'll, in the process, also start to answer the questions and gather some of the material and have some responses to what was discussed this evening. So I'd like to do it, in parallel.
The tea and coffee.
Yes. And crumpets.
Yeah. Dennis has a question, Madam
Yeah,
Chair.
Yeah,
Mr.
go ahead,
Hegney.
Dennis.
Yeah, Mr. Hegney, do you know if Tishman Speyer has done similar kinds of communities? I know them as a high-rise, major project, world-class developer. I don't remember dealing with them in this kind of a project, but I've seen many of these projects around the United States. So do you know if they've done this before?
I'm not sure. It will certainly be part of our debriefing.
Yeah,
when
again,
we
I view them
gather.
as world-class. I'm not saying anything. I'm just curious. I just know them in a different light, but they've got the kind of organization that could get into a lot of these questions and help us out.
Well, nonetheless, they have done residential, so they're very aware.
Yeah.
Well, they've done high-rise residential for sure. I don't know about this kind of residential, but I wouldn't be surprised if they've done it on numerous occasions all over the United States.
So, okay.
Another
so
thing we'll get back to you on.
Yep. So, and all the questions and the 50-foot height and the density and the FAR and the affordable housing and plan to work out the infrastructure. Did we hit everything? And the schools and the
I have been
traffic?
taking notes.
Okie
Yes.
dokie. All right. Now we can, they're telling me they
Please-
won't work
please
anymore.
proceed to dinner.
They won't, they see, they go on strike.
I'm
and they
hearing the
won't-
dinner bell.
See, they
Anyone
won't
else
work.
hearing the dinner
They
bell?
will not work. It's terrible. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Hegney.
All
Mr.
right,
Zambell,
thank you,
we'll
Madam
catch you
Chair.
next time. We're sorry we didn't have questions for you this time. Thank you.
Is Mr. Hegney gone?
Not quite.
No. So three things: affordable, affordable, affordable.
All right. Okay, so what time is it? It's 6:58. Do you guys want to go to 7:20 and you get an extra 10% bonus?
Yes.
All right, I'll see you in a minute.
Bye.
I'll see you in 22. The other Peter is here, but I'm going to keep my video off for a moment.
To Dennis's point on the Tishman Spire website, I don't see any like in kind developments.
Katie, I just looked up in the Senate, the virtual meeting bill is on the Senate calendar again, and I don't think they voted for it yet. So another day.
Oh, boy.
Well, you know, the thing is that they're not considering the public notice requirements. Well, hello, Mr. Cohen, and good evening.
Good evening.
We have Peter Lowe is here. Dennis, are you here? Arn, are you here? He might be chewing. Okay, we'll give him a minute.
Peter Lowe is definitely here. So
Okay. We got Arn. Arn, you're right next to Dennis. Could you knock on his window?
Yeah, here, I'll do it.
Perfect. No, he went the wrong way. He,
Gotta go knock, knock.
Want me to text him?
just go knock, knock, just like this. There he is. Just go like
Oh.
this.
I went to the window.
How can you-
No, you got to go like this.
how can you tell? Isn't it different for everybody? I mean,
Yeah, it is different for everybody. You can move the tiles if you want. If you,
But actually, Arn, that was perfect because you and Dennis are together on my screen. So your knock was perfect.
He's way down south on mine.
well, you and Nick are the center square here.
yeah, they're the center of
newbies.
attention. All right, you guys. We now go to 177 Hamilton LLC, which is for an 830G development at 15 Grand Street, 177 Hamilton Avenue. And with that, Mr. Cohen, if you would proceed.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening. And what I'd like to do, Mr. Chairman, is to briefly describe the project and then to spend a minute or two responding to the issue, the one issue that was raised during yesterday's briefing meeting. So if I could turn to the images that we sent, there we are. Katie, you're in charge?
I'm in charge. Bear with me.
Oh, you're doing great, Katie.
So marked in red is the location on a Google map of the 177 Hamilton Avenue site. It faces south on Grant Street. It's in an LBR2 neighborhood. It's across the street, as you can see, from the Hamilton Avenue School and also from the very nice development that was done under 8-30G in back of the two-door restaurant by our clients. And that, I think, has been felt to be a very successful project. The next image, Katie, shows the existing site plan. There are two structures on the property right now. One is garden catering at about a 1,700 square foot retail food establishment. And in back of it, a 3,500 square foot two-family residence containing a total of 5 bedrooms. The next image will show the proposed development plan with the new building in the front part of the lot with parking in the rear. And the next image shows a rendered view of the front of the building, which faces Hamilton Avenue. And if it looks familiar, it's very similar to a development similar to this that was approved under as a set-aside development under 830G at the just down the block at 171 Avenue at the corner of View Street. The next one shows a view from the, I think it's the southeast corner of the building, showing a small parking area in back with the parking lot to the rear of the building and an overall look of that building. And so the proposal is to develop this building into 10 residential units, 3 of which would be affordable under the provisions of 8-30G. And I guess what I'd like to do is just quickly talk about the issue that was discussed at the briefing meeting, which is can we do a ground floor retail instead of residential? And the answer is under the guidelines that the commission has established, in order for a mixed use development to qualify under the provisions of 830G, the retail or commercial portion would have to satisfy as a standalone development all of the zoning requirements, and there was just no way we could make that happen with this development based upon the setbacks. Needless to say, our clients who are pretty familiar with developing projects of this kind looked at it carefully, tried to do it, and couldn't do it without really damaging the viability of the development as we are proposing it. I think there was a comment that it would be a good idea to try to do this really for the purpose of continuing the retail continuity down Hamilton Avenue. And there's nothing wrong with that approach, except there really is very much of a mixed use feel and development along Hamilton Avenue. Katie, if you go to the next couple of, past these if you would, these are floor plans. There's again a Google Earth view of the block that we're talking about. The corner to the right of the street going heading east to the right is Grand Street, and that corner building is Garden Catering, where this development is being proposed. All along, and we've taken shots of again through Google Earth, of the various storefronts along that side of Hamilton Avenue, and then the next image will show the next the opposite side of the street. Again, similar kind of mixed use, some residential, some retail. It's actually a fairly small area that is within the LBR2 zone in which retail would be permitted. The rest, and I think we've submitted an image, Katie. Probably the next one. No, not the next one. anyway, somewhere down the line, we've reproduced a zoning map showing the small area of Hamilton Avenue in which the LBR2 zone exists. The rest, of course, is R6. So I guess the answer to the issue that was raised yesterday is that we can't make it work. We can't make this development work trying to conform to all of the legal requirements that would enable a retail use to exist on the ground floor, although we looked at it. And the only way we could accomplish it is to considerably change the building, and therefore, in my view, changing our ability to develop the property as a set-aside development under the statute. So I'd be glad to discuss that further or answer questions.
Commissioners?
So, Mr. Cohen, in your narrative, the paragraph indicates while the applicant believes the commercial use of the ground floor would be appropriate for the neighborhood, then it goes on, the commission has determined that in order to have, so it seems from the narrative, the applicant thinks it would be a good idea. And then at the end, you're talking about accordingly compliance with the zoning regulations for commercial ground floor, it's infeasible without a variance. Why not get a variance?
Because we have no hardship.
Yeah, remember we joked about it yesterday.
It's purely self-created, Mr. McNary.
We joked, we said we were the hardship.
Right. And then, so to conform or actually to continue the retail continuity on the street, it's not feasible without a variance because you have no hardship, or is it not feasible because it's financially not viable to make the building smaller?
Finances really have nothing to do with that issue. I heard the discussion yesterday about what viability meant. And the discussion sort of, and it was a broader discussion than just this particular project. What you were talking about, conditions that might be imposed by the commission that made a set-aside development not viable or adversely affected the viability. It really has nothing to do with financial ability to do this, or whether or not a developer is making money or not making money. The issue is whether or not the set-aside development as presented to the commission can be constructed in the way that we are proposing without losing our ability to develop the affordable development under the set-aside regulations. In other words, viable, in my view, has nothing at all to do with financial viability. It's very similar. I really haven't done any research in terms of 8-30G, but it's similar in my view to the word feasible. And the word feasible has been well defined under the wetlands statute and regulations as referring to the ability to construct in accordance with sound engineering practice. In other words, can this be built in the way that we're proposing? And the answer is no. We'd have to make the room smaller and therefore not really usable or marketable, or the whole building smaller, which would affect the viability of that set-aside development. So I think the words of the statute are helpful in terms of determining what we're talking about.
I think actually, Mr. Cohen, if I can interrupt you.
Can I interrupt?
It just brought you right back to what I was talking about. You'd have to make it smaller so the viability of the set-aside development isn't there. It's not presented. And I think that's what I asked in the first question. Is the question because it's a physical constraint, or now I think actually you answered my question. It's actually a financial constraint. It's not viable because you'd have to make the building smaller.
And therefore you couldn't build a building as a set-aside development as we proposed it under the language of the statute.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Mr. Cohen, I think you just said that the the inviability or something that's impact, and correct me if I'm wrong, the inviability has nothing to do, or the finances have nothing to do with the characterization of it being inviable, right?
I didn't understand that.
Did you say that the financial considerations did not have anything to do with the nature of this application's potential inviability?
Yes, that's correct.
Well, I'm having a difficulty wrapping my arms around that notion when it seems to be intrinsically tied to the financial viability. And you're saying no. So
no, that's just what I'm saying, Mike. The point that I'm trying to make, Mr. Lowe, is that the statute, in my view, directs your attention to whether or not the set-aside development can be constructed in the way we have proposed it. And the answer is no, it can't, and comply with zoning. And I don't think the commission either has the right to or wants to change its approach at requiring a retail section to comply with zoning.
We could, but we don't.
Could you use the like, in other words, you have a building there now, a commercial building. Could you, if you establish, the parameters of that building, could you use that footprint, so to speak?
No, we can't, Katie, because the north side of the building now completely abuts the next door neighbor. In other words, there's no airspace between the existing north side of the building and the neighboring property line. So I guess we could build up against that property line. But all the windows of the apartments are located, or many of the windows are located on that side. So we can't do away with the windows.
Could you build a commercial portion in the existing footprint of the existing commercial?
Right.
And then wedding cake or layer back your upper floors to this current setback you've got. So your residential had windows.
I suppose we could do that. You mean build a different building?
Yeah, I mean, slightly.
You're only in a pre-app.
I don't think that's what we have in mind. Remember, the first floor right now is also residential, and we want that setback there as well.
I understand, but my point
So
is,
you're talking about having kind of a crooked building or a building
yes.
that's partially set back.
Let me try it again. If the desire from all parties was to have some sort of commercial or retail establishment on the ground floor, as was proposed in the other project that we've spent some time with and was approved. And the reason you're not doing it is that you couldn't build within the footprint. It seems to me it's certainly possible to build a commercial establishment, a one-story commercial establishment on the exact same footprint as what's there now, right? That much we can do. Right?
It sounds like we certainly could. What it does to the rest of the building, I don't really know as a construction.
Yeah, I understand that, and I don't expect you would. Just having a conversation.
Sure, I'd be glad to discuss that.
I know your clients are here listening, and they probably have a very good answer to my question. But it would seem to me that it could be conceivable, at least, that you could build the commercial ground floor on exactly the same footprint, and then build a residential above that with the setbacks with the airspace that you need for windows.
Yeah. Well,
I
thought about it. Sure.
Do you want me to get into this a little?
I'll just share quickly if I could. This is the existing commercial. Is that correct, Joe?
Yes.
And then this is the existing residential, and then this is what you're proposing for the commercial.
Yeah.
Here. Okay. Do you want me to take this down or keep it up?
No, you can keep it up. I mean, in reality, the only way that I can make this work is if you change the regs to allow for a 5-foot setback, or I were able to get a variance, which is no hardship. So there goes 2 ways of doing it. Or I could do retail on the left side of the building and have the residential on the right side of the building, meaning on the south side.
Right.
But by doing that, it makes it financially very difficult because now I've added 2 residential units to the mix of 6. And I have to add more affordable to that count. And therefore I can't, it causes a financial burden that I can't live with.
Also, Mr. Barilak, putting finances aside, if you take a look at the existing, which Katie now has up, you'll see that nonconformity only is for a portion of that proposed area, so that the balance of it would have to be again set back. Kind of a goofy arrangement, I think. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We
I
have
guess-
had it in the past where there's been, for example, non-conforming floor area on a property, and they've taken the 500 square feet from over here and moved it over there. It's still non-conforming. That's done through the Zoning Board of Appeals. So I'm just thinking, looking at, for example, well, that might be the way to do it, is to argue that you're taking this space here, which is non-conforming, and then you're moving it back in here. So you're making it more conforming along this side. And so in other words, at the end of the day, it's not more non-conforming than it is now. In fact, it could be argued it's less non-conforming.
Katie, your past hearings, you have never allowed a tear down and with new construction to use that one regulation where it's better than it used to be. You've never allowed that.
Yeah, I'm talking about public acts. That's because there's a
State
public
law
act
changed.
2017, and it was amended again in 2018, that allows one to demolish a non-conforming structure or whatever, and build it with the same use. So if you had a 5-family that in an R6 zone, as an example, you can tear that down and build a new 5-family.
So what you're saying is I could build what I'm looking to build in exactly the same location that I'm currently proposing to build it, and you would allow me to have a 5-foot setback on the commercial side and comply with the underlying zone.
Well, I think that's the question under the Public Act. Would it comply under the Public Act to take this portion here and move it over here, let's say? Or would you take that same Public Act and go and argue the variance? I guess that's the question.
The thing is that the law allows you to retain an existing nonconformity unless you've gone through all these hoops giving it up. You know how often developers will do that. But you can retain the nonconformity by law.
The question is what nonconformity are we trying to retain here?
Yeah.
And I believe what we're talking about is a side yard nonconformity.
Yep.
That's the nonconformity, not the front yard, the side yard. We're
So-
okay in the front.
So if you did that, then you could set back the building on the second story, was what Bob was suggesting.
That's not what I'm saying. That I'm not interested in keeping the existing nonconformity on the north side. I'm interested in you allowing me to keep a 4-foot nonconformity on the south side.
You would have to argue that you have, what Mr. Cohen would say to you, you have to argue that you've improved the non-conforming situation.
It's Public Act 17-39, and it says such regulation shall not terminate or deem abandoned a non-conforming use, building, or structure unless the property owner of such use, building, or structure voluntarily discontinues such use, building, or structure, and such discontinuance is accompanied by an intent to not reestablish such use, building, or structure. The demolition or deconstruction of a non-conforming use, building, or structure shall not by itself be evidence of such property owner's intent to not reestablish such use, building, or structure.
I'm familiar with it, Katie. I always thought it codified, what existing law was, which is that abandonment was a question of intent. I don't think it helps us here because we're not talking about the right nonconformity. But look, we'll take another look at it, and maybe maybe Jody might agree with you, but it's, I think it's a stretch. And, you know, we're coming to you hopefully with a set aside proposal that conforms to the statute, that fulfills, you know, a need that we've all acknowledged. That's very, I think, done in a beautiful building, one that was approved in a similar way not so very long ago by this commission. But we will certainly take a look at that.
Yeah, one thing we're not interested in doing is building a pancake, you know, a cake layered building. We're looking to build exactly what we're proposing, in the exact same location that we're proposing. And, you know, yes, I don't disagree that the retail conformity is nice, you know, meaning the continuity. But I think what we're proposing of 10 units, 3 of which are affordable, does quite a bit for the neighborhood, and it totally complies with 830G, and I think it would be a nice addition to the neighborhood.
I guess one of the questions under the pre-application is whether the commission felt that you could proceed under the Public Acts, because correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Cohen, that, and Mr. Pecora, that if you could do the building that you're proposing with the retail on the first floor, you would. Am I correct on that or not correct?
I don't know. Under this current situation with retail being the way it is, I know the safest route is to do 10 residential units. That's for sure. You know, so, but I mean, you know, the narrative is true. We initially, our first reaction to the neighborhood is to keep the retail continuity. But I'm not sure I want to spend the amount of money necessary to try to prove that we're right, you know. So that's pretty much that.
I just wanted to add a quick question, since this is a pre-app and you guys are bringing it up. Would the commission, because it would be under your purview to consider whether or not a nonconformity is being increased or decreased, if we came in and said, well, our side yards together are, you know, 9 feet under current conditions, and our side yards together under proposed conditions are 10 feet.
That's what Katie and I were thinking.
Yeah, is that something you guys would consider?
Yep, that's what we were thinking. You reduce the overall area of nonconformity.
Okay, it's definitely something we can look at.
What I hear is that your client is not particularly interested in retail potentially, and also not particularly interested in having the second floor set back. I mean, it gives a terrace, gives you a little balcony, which is very usable because it would be.
Well, you would have to.
We wouldn't have to.
You would have to. You would have to have this right side, the south side of the building, overhang the building on the south side. So it's the building has to be 40 feet wide to make it work. Okay. So if you picture the first floor 9 feet to the left and the upper floors 4 feet to the right, it's overhanging on the right side, meaning on the south side, and you create a terrace on the left side. So it just creates a building nightmare, and plus aesthetically a nightmare too. Okay. Because then you got posts and, you know, all kinds of.
Yeah, I was thinking if we didn't have to terrace it, if we could use the 5 feet, because if we have 0 on the north side and 9 point something on the south, and then we change that to 5 and 5.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, no, I think we're all on the same page, Michelle. It's not only you're not only bringing the north side into compliance, you're also making it a lot more compliant on the front setback as well.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay, any other?
So why doesn't it work in less than 40 feet? Why do you need the 40 feet in width?
So pull up the floor plan.
Please.
Please. Pretty please. then tell me, how do you take 4 feet out of the width of the building and allow 2 viable apartments on each floor above? You can't, with 2 means of egress and everything else. I've looked at it 20 different ways and it just doesn't work.
That's 4 feet in total or 4 feet on either side?
No, it's 4 feet in total because I'm not interested in building on the property line on the left side. So what you're asking me to do is to make the building 35 feet in theory. I mean, taking 4 feet out of slice the building, by 4 feet in the middle. So I'm taking out a hallway and the rooms just don't work at that point. So that's why I can't make it work. And I'm just a little confused. I mean, when we went to 171, I mean, I think if I'm not mistaken, Nick voted against it to be mixed use. He couldn't understand the how retail, residential, he went into a whole speech about how it doesn't work in his opinion.
But we treated it separately, didn't we?
Yeah, no, we did. I
Yeah,
don't disagree.
And which we think was good precedent. Okay, anything else on this? We've asked the question, we've given some suggestions. Any other comments or questions from the commission at this time?
Well, not to be too glib, but it seems to me that it's possible to make this work, and you could potentially, not to torture this, but you could potentially have your wedding cake and eat it too. You could have this set back on the second floor.
I totally disagree with you, Peter, and we're not gonna redesign the building. We're going in with the building as is. And we're going to go in with 10 residential units unless you want to change the regulation, and we'll consider it. And we would even consider adding an additional affordable unit under certain circumstances as well.
Okay, I just putting it out there that there seems to be a lot of resistance to any change, and what I'm hearing from you is that the changes that are being suggested don't work, right?
Correct.
Okay. Questions, comments,
Mr.
anything else?
What is the certain circumstance that you were thinking you could add an affordable unit?
I've been in contact with Mike Santora, and I asked, because you've been asking every applicant except this applicant, can you add more affordability to the minimum requirement? And I've been trying to figure out ways where I could do that. And on this project, I actually can financially make it work with 4 units being affordable, provided one of the units is at 80% AMI and the other 3 units are SMI. But all of the units would be on the first floor.
So what I think you're saying, if I remember your layout, then is that you would need to concentrate the affordable units in the studios, right? Studios and 1 bedrooms, and wouldn't make any.
The 2 studios, the 2 efficiency units would be affordable, and the 2 first floor 1 bedrooms would be affordable, and my upper floors would be market. And at that level, the numbers come close to what it would be if it were retail, less $1,000, $1,500 a month, which to me is close enough to make it work. But having said that, and Bruce can correct me, but according to Mike Santora, you are allowed to approve that.
Oh, yes.
But if I were to go in with the application like that, you could deny it and I would not have 830G protection in an appeal.
So we've got an idea how to get around that, which would be that we would approve an 830G. And then you could revise the affordability afterwards.
Which is
And-
exactly what I did on 4 Orchard, correct?
Yeah, which is what we think would work.
Well, when Mr. Pecor and I spoke about this today, we discussed what would happen if that instance occurred, where you approve, a straight 830G, 30%. The units are the right mix that they're supposed to be in compliance with the market rate. And then after the approval,
Correct.
then the applicant changes the affordability plan so that, let's just say, all of the affordables he's just described are now studios or 1 bedroom, and then all the market rates are
No.
three.
Yeah,
So
no,
that's the question.
that doesn't work. That doesn't work. It's increasing the affordable unit number without giving up any of the ones originally designated affordable.
No, actually, according to Mike Santora, you are allowed to approve that. All the numbers would count the same way.
Right.
And you would still get the same viewpoints.
Yeah, we know that.
And you are allowed to approve it with the mix that I'm talking about, which is not the normal 830.
No, we know that.
mix.
Yeah, we know that.
Okay.
We wouldn't have been suggesting all this if we hadn't done our research, and
Okay.
several of us are fairly obsessive about that.
So wait, so just so I understand what you're saying, Madam Chair, is that you approve a normal 830G. After the fact, you change the mix of the units such that all of the affordable, in my example, are 1 bedrooms, and then all of the market are three.
No, that's not what I said. That's what
Okay,
Mr.
that's
Pecora said. I
Pecora
just said we can approve an 830G, and it can have more, that has more than the 30%. I mean, we've read that a million times now. We know that it can. That might concern you guys about having smaller units be the affordable is that Greenwich Communities keeps telling us over and over again that they need larger units to be affordable. So if we go, I mean, that's what they keep telling us, that their wait list is of multifamily people.
That's the end. That is the-
Multi-member families.
Margarita, that you're right as it relates to Greenwich Communities. They have a lot of 40%, and that's not necessarily inaccurate. However, there is a need for 1 bedrooms and efficiencies because we're renting like crazy.
Okay.
And getting phone calls like crazy on that. So we have disability, we have people from ableists, we have people from Pathways, we have people, seniors that are calling me every day for 1 bedroom. So I wouldn't.
Well, as far as accessibility is concerned, can you make the argument that you want to provide this kind of housing on the first floor? And
they're all accessible. Every unit in the building is accessible.
Was there? I didn't see. Is there an elevator?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's that one. But nonetheless, is there something to say for being the accessibility on the ground floor is preferable for handicap?
No, not when you have an elevator.
Well, unless you have a power outage.
We have a generator.
Okay.
By law.
Okay, any other questions, folks?
Well, my 2 cents are, I'd prefer to have a building all residential. The town needs more residential than it does retail. And if we're able to squeeze another, AMI, another semi-affordable apartment in here, I definitely support that. And, if it isn't 2 or 3 bedroom, fine. There are plenty of other 8-30Gs, which are going to give us 2 or 3 bedroom apartments. So that's my 2 cents.
Well, I like the idea of the retail continuity. If there's some way that can be fashioned by coming up with some kind of other scenario, but I think that the building generally is appropriate size for the neighborhood, and would not be the worst thing. The kind of retail there is very suitable to the neighborhood, and it would be nice to have more retail for that neighborhood. It just and adding 10 more units makes these small retail units more viable. So it would add to the community, but generally it's a good. It seems like a good place for this kind of development, and it would add to the to the streetscape and the neighborhood.
Do you have the ability to approve the north side of the building being retail, the south side of the first floor, the 2 1-bedrooms being residential, which would comply with the underlying zone, but only requiring 3 residential affordable units?
Sounds like a good idea.
So you're saying that the retail space itself would comply, but it would be surrounded on the first floor by residential?
It would just be the north side of the building. On the first floor would be retail. Just split the building in half, in essence. The north side of the first floor would be retail. The south side would be 2 residential 1-bedroom units like you see.
Which would work very well for you because the north side is not as desirable, I would assume.
Yeah, but make sure you're doing the calculations. 30% of 8 units is 2.4.
You have to have 3.
What I'm asking for is only 2.
Well,
Yeah, you'd
Mr.
have to.
Pecor, suppose you applied to the Housing Trust Fund for a little bit of money and turned this into an assisted housing. Then you escape the requirement of having a minimum of 30%, and you can use AMI as well.
According to Mike Santora, that's not necessarily works, which I would love to have a conference call with you and Mike and discuss that, because that's where Mike said, Joe, why are you even going that route? Just go in with what you're proposing, which is all 4 units being affordable, but all on the first floor. Don't comply with the 830G requirement of proper allocation of types of units. And the town of Greenwich has the right to approve an alternate to 830G, quote unquote.
Yeah, I don't need to talk about what Mike thinks or not thinks, because I've never talked to him, and this is a complex subject that I'd hate to.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I have read the law, and I do think that if you were able to take some town money and turn this into an assisted housing, you could do exactly what you want to do.
Okay, so that's a topic for another day, I think, right? Because we don't have to talk about that right now. The question is, what does the building have in it and how does it get designed? Anybody else have questions and comments? Any guidance for the applicant? In that case, if it is acceptable to you, Mr. Cohen, I will turn to the public for comment. Public comment on 177 Hamilton. Now I see Mr. Shahadi, or maybe he's here on South Water. Anybody wish to speak on the 830G on 177 Hamilton? No. Okay. There you go. Okay, so I think you're all set. I'm going to tell you green stuff. You don't have, if you can do some green stuff somewhere, I'm going to say that. And there it is.
Solar
Okay.
power.
Okay, good. We did send your equipment to EMAC for review and did not hear back from them. But when you come back, they will be ready to comment. The HVAC stuff that.
Yeah, it's no different than the HVAC stuff I've ever used everywhere else. So we're good.
Yeah, but now we're starting to get comments on it from EMAC. Okay. So with that, we'll see you when you come back.
Yes, ma'am.
And
Thanks a
you'll
lot.
work these issues out with staff. All right. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Our next application is at, hold on a second. Let me just move Sylvester. Our next application is at 112 South Water Street. LLC. This is a pre-app as well, and it is the use of the property by Connecticut Natural Gas and pursuant to PURA regulations to move what they have on Old Track Road to this property so that they can retain a 20-minute compliance time to their gas territory. Response time. I said that wrong, response time. And hello, Mr. Layden, and you guys are really far away. You know that, right?
Would you like us to get closer?
No, that's okay.
Okay. Good evening, Madam Chair and the rest of the commission. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us today. My name is Stephanie Stitch, and I'm speaking on behalf of the applicants. Permission to bring in Jeffrey Layden from Layden Industries, as well as Tom and Ross from CNG.
And Mr. Layden is in our audience, so if you would raise your hand, Mr. Layden.
Oh, he's in already. He's
in already. Okay.
There. Yep.
Okay.
Do you want me to start the slides?
Sure, that'd be great.
Okay.
So our proposal is to take the Ebbtide Marina boat storage and service yard and turn it into a regional operations facility for CNG while preserving the existing private marina. As you know, CNG has a responsibility to be within a 20-minute response time to their gas territory pursuant to state regulations. CNG is currently located at 16 Old Track Road in Greenwich, but their lease is up next month. They have been searching for a year and a half for a viable location in Greenwich, and this is their best and only option. There's no backup plan, unfortunately. If CNG doesn't get this area in Greenwich, they're going to have to respond to emergencies all the way from East Hartford, which could take up to 2 hours. If you could go to the next slide, Katie.
I'm sorry, I can't figure out how to make it bigger. It looks bigger on the screen share, so I'm not sure.
That's all right. We can see it. It's good enough.
Okay.
So the site, we would keep the existing marina intact, and we would use that site as office space for only 2 to 4 managers from CNG. And there would be both indoor and outdoor storage. The indoor storage would have tools and supplies for CNG to be able to respond to emergency repairs in natural gas facilities throughout Greenwich. The outdoor storage will simply be for gas leak detecting cars and utility vehicle parking. You could go to the next slide for me, thank you. So CNG's work is primarily going to be in the field. So during the day, there won't be much activity. And at night, it's just going to be parked vehicles. The site is just going to be a satellite home base for Greenwich. And of course, we're very happy and able to make the streetscape however the town prefers it to look like. You can go to the next slide. I know yesterday you guys had some questions about the flood zone, and you can be rest assured that in the last 5 years, there have been no floods on the property.
Oh, ma'am, I'm sorry. That would not be, if it's a flood zone, it doesn't matter if there haven't been any floods in the last 5 years. It means that it's a FEMA flood zone. We can't go to FEMA and tell them there haven't been any floods recently.
Oh, no, I think the concern was why CNG would want to be in an area that possibly they wouldn't be able to get out if there was a flood.
Well, we were worried about your equipment specifically because if it's designated a flood zone. But while you're on that topic, the big question we were asking you yesterday is, this is not a use that's allowed in this zone. Do you have the ability to override our zoning for some reason?
Well, CNG is ultimately approved by the state. Their location is ultimately approved by the state, and we have spoken to the siting council and the Public Utilities Regulatory Authority, and they have no objection to the site. But we do want to go through the normal planning and zoning process. We want to be, good neighbors. We want to serve the town of Greenwich as best as we can.
So you're saying that if we denied it, you could still do it? Let's just put the cards on the table.
I believe we'd be able to go to the state under a hardship application.
Okay. All right. So that's our first and greatest question. We've been trying to get this area to be more consistent with the way it's zoned, which is the WB. Now you're taking a step in the right direction, which is that you are keeping the existing marina, but you're still adding an industrial use that would not be allowed in the zone. And I'm thinking this also, Katie, I'm going to be honest, we've got to spend some time looking at this because there are state regulations that would apply to this. Have you looked at all the state laws that are the environmental and coastal laws?
Me or the applicant?
I'm asking the applicant. I know we haven't. I mean, you see, yes, Pura, you might be able to override because you're a utility, but there's also state law that protects coastal resources and waterfront resources, which this is. I'm not clear that you could override. That's why I was asking the question yesterday.
We believe that we can.
All right. Well, we're going to have to get a legal opinion on that, Katie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I'm not clear, ma'am, because Pura is a state agency, and in our minds, the Connecticut Environmental Protection Act, the Coastal Management Act, those have pretty good power. Anyway, we'll look into it because that was we've been working on making this zone more water-based, oriented to those uses, and y'all are kind of putting something sticky in the works. Complimenting you for keeping the marina, however, I am grateful for that, but.
So in other words, the commission needs something to hang their hat on because it doesn't comply with zoning. So they need something in order to be able to move forward with this is basically what to interpret it differently or to say it differently.
It doesn't comply with zoning. And moreover, it does not comply then, I think, Katie, because remember the WB is state law. It's
right.
State law. The water-based business zone is a state law. It is not just our local zoning. We have it consistent with state law. Second, you have the flood overlay zone here, which is federal. So I would like to see, ma'am, if you don't mind, I'd love to see an opinion from your lawyers on how you override state and federal law. Just to know, because I didn't think so.
Sure, we can provide
Okay.
that.
I mean, you're the one who does this, and I'm way out of my depth here. We don't see these very often, as you know. But I believe that we could also go to the siting council and Katie, what did we do the last time? We intervener status?
When we had a disagreement, you mean?
Yeah, remember we had the disagreement.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, we've had some where there's been no disagreement and we've just sent them along their way. And then there's been some where we had significant disagreement and yeah, we filed it. Any status we could.
So, all right. So say, for example, just because we're doing the pre-app, if you were to do this, one of the things we would want would be a public access walkway along the water. And we would want to not obstruct. I know you're going to laugh at me, but we always hope that one day the views will be beautiful. We would have to, and again, this is under state law, we have to preserve the waterfront, the water views. So, yeah, so we could talk to, public access to the waterfront is important to us. You know, we've been trying to put in those walkways. Do you want to go on with your presentation? I see you have a couple more slides.
Do you have anything to add? No. Yeah. So we're very amenable to making this site to the town's preference. It's going to be a much nicer location visually. Right now it's kind of an eyesore.
Ma'am, can I just ask, how much of the property do you think you're actually going to need? Because you're not going to be occupying all of it, right? So are you going to be, you're building a 30 by 60 building, and you need some parking. So do you know how much that is? How much?
The property will be utilized by CNG on the site. The only areas that we're trying to figure out that wouldn't be a CNG activity would be parking.
I'm not sure I heard you completely. The only areas that you wouldn't be using are what?
The only areas that CNG wouldn't be occupying would be parking for the marina.
Parking for the marina. Getting back to the marina, one of the things that is kind of important for marinas is to have dry storage. So if there was a way to work that out where they could have an area for dry storage, that would really be quite helpful for the viability of the marina. So just wondering if I could somehow think about that somehow. But you know, that's why I want to know exactly how much space you really need, because if you could consolidate and leave some extra space for the marina to operate, and it would be very, very good for dry storage, especially.
And what exactly is the use down there? So, I mean, I see you have an office space, but I imagine that you have equipment and whatever. So is there a way to put the office space anywhere else, you know, in like off-site somewhere? I mean, just general office somewhere, and then just very much so limit what you do on this property. Like maybe don't build an office building and you only have storage or something, so that you are even further reducing the amount of nonconformity on the property.
It would be hard operationally to do that because the office space supports the field personnel. The field personnel all drive a company van to respond to the various calls that they go on throughout the day, and they need a muster area to get their work orders and acquire their parts and things that they need in order to perform their duties. So to separate the two would be pretty inefficient for the utility company.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to understand a little bit better. You've chosen this site, but there really are other sites. It's not like this is the only one. So what is it about this site that you think is particularly good? Is there something special about the location? Is there something about just being in a certain zone? Is there something about this particular street that's is advantageous for you? I'm a little confused because there are plenty of other sites you could be at.
So in considering the available locations, which an extensive search was performed, it was not clear that we could find another location that we could warehouse the vehicles and the operations building on the same site, which was the goal. And also this area, when you drive it, Although it is a water type zoning, with the amount of exterior storage that's currently happening on the site, we looked at the site as it would be a positive for the neighborhood, because instead of all the boats stacked up in the parking lot that everyone has to look at, we could beautify the parking area a bit and make it a little more green in the front where it has no greenery currently, and maintain the water dependent use with the marina. At the same time, we could park all the vehicles outside, which is one of the goals.
Well, I would take a different view of that. I don't quite see, I understand what you said, but I don't quite see it the way you do. It seems like there would be better locations, I think, to try to preserve the water uses is a pretty important fundamental objective of the commission. It's unfortunate that you would want to be here, but I think that it's still, I don't quite get how this will work.
And I'm very grateful to you because Peter Levy, you put it a little more diplomatically than I was gonna put it. I felt like I heard you saying this was not an attractive part of town and therefore we'd be okay with you going in there. And here we've been working on a program with the residents of this neighborhood. We've consistent with our long range plan, planting trees and working on beautification and really trying to upgrade the waterfront zone. We know we haven't made enough progress, but we don't see it as a candidate for an industrial use, and we don't see it as a candidate for doing something consistent with our zoning. And that's why I keep coming back to this issue of we're going to have to understand how far you can go with this without us agreeing to it, because I'm hearing discomfort.
Well, the goal all along was not to do something with you disagreeing to it. We
Good.
came to the pre-application meeting in hopes that we could find a way where we could use the property as a base of operations while maintaining the standards which Greenwich is looking to use in the neighborhood. If there was a compromise to be made, it's a site that's immediately available and we can use it where we're getting kicked out of the current site. It's the only location that we have found that is immediately available. And that was why we went to the pre-application, to hopefully get on the same page and see if there was a compromise that could be made where you can get what satisfies your current agenda and we can operate there at the same time.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the first things I would ask you to do is I would ask you to meet with the neighborhood association. Okay.
We did get comments from.
I know we got comments and I see they're here, but I think we did hear from the neighborhood association, and depending on what they say tonight, one of them has their hand up now, and I think it's time to let them in if the commission
Before we
doesn't
move
mind.
on, I have a few questions. In your narrative, you're talking about current conditions. You said that the marina would stay. Would the fuel dock stay as well?
Yes,
And who runs the fuel dock now?
the current marina operator.
Okay, so it's going to be a combined use of your proposed use and the fuel dock and the marina. And you said there was a failing bulkhead. Is that going to be repaired?
Yes,
Okay, and there was an old truck scale on the site. Is that going to be removed?
yes.
Okay, great. Now, says pure regulations has to be within a 20-minute response time for gas territory. What is the gas territory of this site? How far does it extend into Stamford, that kind of thing?
It's only in the town of Greenwich.
It's just the town. Okay. Okay, great.
So
Now,
one of the
now we
ahead.
we
This
talked
is on
about
the
flood zones.
periphery of the town. I mean, this is
Right.
right at the
20
town
minutes.
border.
Peter Lowe, 20 minutes, they can get to the town. 20 minutes, you can traverse most of the town except at rush hour. I mean, they'd
Okay.
be better off in a central location. You want to put them on the high school?
Right. As I was saying, it's in a flood zone, and I think
It's a
we
good
touched on
idea,
this
raise
before
money.
that. Yes, the site is in a flood zone, but the road that you would use is in a flood zone as well. So the question would be, when you're talking about a 20-minute response time, is that on an average day, or is that part of an emergency situation?
I think we probably have to get one of the CNG operators to answer that question.
Okay, that's fine. We're in a pre-app anyway. Now you were talking about actually vehicles and stuff. What's actually stored on site? It's just the vans? Would there be material storage, gravel, sand, anything like that? And is there a field crew that's here that would be doing street excavation or anything like that? Would we have backhoes as well?
Yes, the service center that services all of Greenwich encompasses a couple small dump trucks, a backhoe, utility vans, supervisors' cars. It's by no means a heavy highway construction company, but it is a typical utility crew that you would see on a roadway would be storing their equipment.
Okay, and all of that equipment would be stored outside?
Correct.
Okay. Understanding this, I guess this would be a 24-hour operation. If somebody would be there just in case there's an emergency. Would there be site lighting that would be on a lot?
Well, yeah, I would assume there would be some level of site lighting.
All right.
And then at the street right now, there's a chain link fence and gates and things. Is that to be retained with the gates to maintain security?
Yes, the facility would need to be gated. The chain link fence would probably be removed and replaced with a decorative style fencing, I would imagine, but there would be a need for a secure site.
Okay, great. And one last question. Lots of parking here. Is this a mix of parking for the marina and for your use, or is this most of the parking dedicated for your use?
It's a mix.
Okay. In the wintertime, when the boats are not in, would you be contemplating using the remaining spaces that you don't use as winter storage for boats?
We haven't really thought of that until you brought it up tonight.
Okay.
Talk to the clients about that.
Okay, because I think that kind of covers it, Madam Chairman.
Okay, anybody else? No, Mr. Shahadi, I'm going to turn to the public. So Mr. Shahadi from the Byram Neighborhood Association is going to speak. Mr. Shahadi, whenever you're ready, just unmute and turn on your vid.
I've been promoted to a participant.
Hello.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Al Shahadi. I'm a longtime resident of Byram, and I'm the land use chair of the Byram Neighborhood Association. You guys are familiar with me. I pop up now and then. We spent some time thinking about this proposal and walked the site over the weekend, talked amongst ourselves probably a little bit more than usual. And, this is a challenging area to redevelop. The WB zone is not a perfect fit for Byram, and there's not a long line of uses out there, of developers out there that are saying, we have the perfect community-facing need that meets both the WB zone and fits in with the flood zone. So our impulse, our gut is to make some suggestions and try and make this work. There's some things about it that are imperfect and that, maybe we wouldn't rather see, but there's also things that could make this a plus for the community, and so we're willing to work.
Okay, so Mr. Shahadi, just so you know, this humble commissioner was willing to fall on her sword for you guys. So, I mean, just so you know, and I suspect that I'm not alone in that, but I won't commit the rest of them. You know, we protect every corner of Greenwich, and I don't want the BNA to feel that you have to do this.
Nope,
We
no,
will
we are
look
not.
into, okay.
So, you know, I think the first thing that we include in our comments that the chair already included is a longtime goal of the community is waterfront access along the river. May take us 20 or 30 years to get there, but we would love to have a walkway along the river from Mill Street all the way almost to the bridge, or as far as it can go. Given that there is a public pocket park next door that already has that waterfront access, an absolute minimum requirement would be to include, say, a 15-foot wide walkway along in front of the marina that would then carve back along the north side of the property back to the street so people could come in and out. You know, that public access would be a plus for the neighborhood. Two, I think you've covered it, but we have real concerns about parking. There is a small parking lot in the adjacent park next door. And a real concern would be if there's not adequate parking for the boats, that you would have people coming and using that space, and that space is not available for people wanting to come in, park near the park and use the park. Third is flooding along South Water Street is a huge issue, and it's not just rising waters out of the river. There are real issues with downpours like Ida and sewers backing up and things like that. So this is probably farther ahead than you have gone, but to make as much of that property pervious surface, whether it's a rain garden, whether it's permeable pavement, deep-rooted trees, etc. There were a handful of other things that I think, you know, with some questions and some other comments. One regarding long-term ownership, it's not clear to us who would own this. And we have some concerns about removing a more conforming waterfront use and then having it in a private hands that is not CNG, and 5 years from now, their lease is up. They're back to looking for something, and we have a non-conforming use and no real ability to go back.
See, and you've let an industrial, a commercial, semi-industrial use go into this location. And as Katie says, you may be opening the barn door wide on that one.
Yeah,
And
so
you don't know what's going to happen down the road.
So, you know, I want to make sure that people don't take my comments as any way in limiting what the commission has the authority to do. This is just the neighborhood saying, given either inappropriate or inability to develop other sites there, this might be workable, but I have to defer to the committee and the chair to decide whether in fact switching to an industrial use is possible. If that is something the committee can do, what I'm giving is guidelines for how the neighborhood association would be willing to support it. There were a couple of other minor things in my letter that I think I'll save the committee's time and refer the applicant to the letter. My contact information is there. Probably the last thing that I would put on there, which I forget which one of the commissioners flagged it, is that is currently a marina that's supported by the current land use. You may need to dig deeper to find out what's really needed other than just the docks to support the marina use. Mr. McBride brought up the fuel. There's access. There's a bunch of other things that may be needed that are currently provided by ebb tide. And so, you know, to keep the marina, you would need to add those. My contact information is on the letter. I will invite, but not require, communication. And again, I defer to the committee on the basic question of whether an industrial use in this area is allowable.
Mrs. Shahadi, did you say, I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I understood this, that some of this property should use some of their parking to support the pocket park? Or can you just explain what you meant by the parking?
No, sorry. I was afraid that the pocket park parking would get used by marina boat owners, and therefore there would be no pocket park parking available for the pocket park.
Thank you for clarifying.
So anyway, thank you very much for the time to add our comments.
Okay, I would say that they should meet with the Byram Neighborhood Association, but I think at some level, I'd like to know more about the legal situation. Mr. Shahadi, I am very, very uncomfortable with this because the WB is a state law. And that's why we have it. I know I keep saying that. There are a lot of environmental and coastal state laws that are involved in this. And it concerns me to add an industrial use, a commercial industrial use to a neighborhood that we're trying so hard, that waterfront area, that every time somebody comes in, you know how we've pushed back when the, other
Yes.
applications have come in that we don't think are appropriate to the WB. And we were disappointed when, and by the way, it's worth the applicant knowing, DEEP did not support, the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection did not support us doing housing in this very same area, more housing in the WB because of it being the flood zone and the evacuation issues. So when we changed our regulations recently for the WB zone and we were wanting to add housing, DEEP pushed back and told us that it was an evacuation concern specifically on South Water Street. I'm right, Katie? That was where the issue of the, yep. So, yeah, okay, everybody remembers, sometimes you start talking and you're like wondering, how did I know that? So there's just a lot here. Katie may have I'm just going to throw this out to CNG. Katie, who is born and bred in Greenwich, may have some thoughts on other sites that you haven't considered. So if you haven't met with her yet, it might be a good idea to meet with Katie and see if she has other thoughts for you that would make us be less nervous. There might be something, I know you've been working on this for a while. I wish you had come and talked to us way sooner because we would have tried to help. We want you to have the 20-minute service. We know it's important and we want to be supportive of your business operations. So maybe Katie can have some ideas. The Department of Public Works may have some spare land on one of their properties, Katie. That's another option.
Yep.
They could lease to you.
I know that the DPW is probably doesn't have any spare land. They're in the similar situation where they're looking for construction areas too, especially with what's going on at Island Beach.
Quarter Sheep Hill Road.
Don't be funny.
There's a bunch
Don't
of things
be funny.
along River Road.
Okay, Al, I'm going to bring you
Hill.
back out. We've got one other person.
Thank you very much.
Is Rostis Bennett with you, Al?
What was the name?
Rostis Bennett. Well, I'll bring him in and see.
He's
All
with
right.
CNG.
Hey, oh, he's with CNG. Okay. All right. Thank you, Al. There is a CNG person and I hadn't realized they wanted to join you. Rostis Bennett, he's with you? Ma'am?
Yep, he's with CNG and he's with us.
Okay, so the poor guy's had his hand up and I thought he was a member of the public. All right, anybody else from the public wish to speak on the CNG application at South Water Street? Please raise your virtual hands now. No. Okay, so I guess much trepidation is our plan A. Our main piece of feedback. Our plan B is if it's going to happen, we'll do our best to work with you and to make it okay. But we're not comfortable with the site. Does the commission agree? Am I speaking for everybody when I give this guidance?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay. Okay. Just not. All right. I think we all kind of, but if it is what it is, then we'll work with you and, we'll change our tune but maybe we can do better.
Well, just to the idiot layman, it seems somewhat inconceivable, the rationale that this is the best possible use for this
I think they were partly looking for a place where we were partially industrial looking to begin with, where we were, they've got a bind. Are you going to go into the middle of one of our business zones? Are you going to go into a residential neighborhood? Where are you going to be able to locate this kind of a facility? Number one,
There are
that's
places in
practical.
town. There are places.
Right. And number two, which I bet was a driving force, is at what cost? And this was probably a very economic attractive opportunity for them. And so I'm guessing, right, this was priced right and it met your needs, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So some of it is the pricing. They could go next door to Mr. Barilak, but Riverside's very expensive.
I understand, but it flies in the face of sort of our approach to
I got it.
water dependent use. Anyway, never mind.
I got it. I mean, you heard it right off. A cold wind blew right through the Zoom.
Okay, you were just asking, so I'm responding.
Okay, all right. So what I would suggest, CNG folk, is if you connect with Katie first right away, have that dialogue and start talking to us, and we'll try to partner as best we can. You know how we feel about this, but we'll try to partner with you.
Madam Chair, my name is Ross Despinett. I'm the
Hello.
operations manager in Greenwich.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. And you look really familiar. I've seen you somewhere before,
Yeah,
but
I'm in town hall fairly regularly.
yeah.
Working with just about everybody there. It's a great group of folks, and we have a very good relationship with the town. And Katie, I will take you up on that offer to just continue talking about open space. We have looked at many different locations in Greenwich, and for one reason or another, they just don't seem to work for us. And the outside space is almost more important, or it is more important to me than the inside space. We need room. We've got 31 employees in Greenwich that need to park. So we need a lot big enough, realizing we don't want to put their vehicles on the street. We'd prefer to put them on the property, along with the equipment that we have that Mr. Layden was talking about. And we need a building for spare parts and some small office space.
And you're trying to do that without paying an extravagant, obviously you're trying to do it in a way that isn't uneconomic for you. And that's one of the big binds.
Yeah, I don't really get involved in the finances, being the operations
Yeah, we always say
manager,
that too.
But finances are always important.
Yeah.
But that's, I don't even know the financial deal behind this. So when I've been looking at sites, it's purely, let's look at the site from the operations perspective and will it work? And I would rather stay in Greenwich than not be in Greenwich. And we have looked at some sites in Stamford. But we're a Greenwich company, would like to stay in Greenwich.
No, we want you here. We want the 20-minute service. We wouldn't want to make it difficult for you to meet your performance requirements. No, we want to work with you on that.
And that emergency response time is very important.
Absolutely.
Because the best way to mitigate an issue is to get there and take action.
And people could die.
Much like the fire department does, we work hand in hand with the fire department every day.
And you also have life-threatening situations you're often addressing. So
yes, ma'am.
Totally understand that we want to partner with you. We want to be good partners. We just also have a responsibility to protecting the town. But no, totally understand. You could be dealing with a life-threatening situation and you have to have that response time. We get that.
Thank you. And Katie, I'll talk with you this week if you don't mind.
Yep, that'd be great.
And if the town has some space that we could look at, would be happy to consider that and just see if we can do something. But we just haven't found the right location. This is the best fit for us because it keeps us here in town.
Okay. I know I'm trying to think of every piece of property in town and I'm striking out, but Katie knows town with her eyes closed. So hopefully she'll have an idea that nobody's had.
Understood.
Ooh, that's a lot of pressure. Sorry. All right. Okay. Well, we'll talk more then, you guys. One thing we often do is feel free to come in with another pre-app and just come talk to us. Just come in with a follow-up pre-app so you don't have to spend a lot of money and go to a lot of trouble. Just tell Katie you want to come in and talk with us.
Sure, that'd be great.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry we were a little bit frostier in our response. Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right, so our next application, we're now going back to tent land. And it is, the first tent is 146 to 148 Sound Beach Avenue. Who is representing the applicant, Katie?
The Sound Beach Avenue,
It looks like it's Anshu Vinyarti.
Yep. Bring him in.
All right. And there he is.
Anshu, are you doing the Sound Beach Avenue one or because I know you're definitely La Penguin. I just wasn't sure if you were also Sound Beach Avenue.
I'm doing them both. I'm doing
Good.
Sound Beach and Penguin, LaFace and Penguin.
Okay,
Good.
so we'll start with 20 Arcade. Can you turn on your vid or, up to you?
It's on. I don't know why it's not showing up.
Oh, every now and then it's on backwards or something.
There you go.
Okay, there you go. Oh, looks lovely. I'm glad you did. So it's 20 Arcadia Road. We discussed this yesterday. Were you by any chance listening yesterday?
I was not.
Okay, so we had a concern about, and really we talked about both your applications at the same time, knowing that it was the same owner. But we'll start out with this one. And what our concern was, we had a lot of flexibility what we could do when we had the governor's executive orders under COVID.
Right.
Those have now gone away. We can't do that stuff anymore because we don't have regulations that allow it. And looking at, for example, the space that you're taking on Arcadia, that alley that you're using, who owns that?
It's owned by 146, 148 Sound Beach Avenue.
So
It's
you
private
actually,
property.
it's your private property.
Yes.
And it is not supposed to be an easement or a transit back to the parking. There's been you have given no deeds.
No, from the best of my knowledge, on the building on the right of us, across from us, which is owned by Erstad Biddle, which houses a tile store, they own 2 feet of the land of the walkway that comes that's on that in that middle area where the tent is and our outdoor dining is. And they have made it clear to us that there is no easement or a walkway. They have actually taken to locking the gate that goes through to block off the parking that people use in the back where the King Supermarket parking is, and then walking through and cutting into town. So that gate isn't even unlocked any longer.
Okay.
So really, there is no easement or a walkway there.
All right, so you own 100% of that alley and you can prove that you have ownership and control and that there's no easements. You're gonna need somebody to do this probably for you. There's no access rights that you've ever given to anybody for that.
No, we have not. And we have actually, over the last couple of years with this whole COVID madness, we have that additional 2 feet of space, which houses the legs of the tent. I have been paying rent to Erstad Biddle for that space.
Okay, so you have a lease with them that you could provide for the 2 feet.
100%, yeah.
Okay, and that you could have a long-term lease. Okay.
Yes.
So that would solve the first problem we had. The second one is we got stuck on this idea of having a permanent tent.
Well, we're really not asking for it to be permanent. We since And I'm not sure that I completely understand how the executive order is different this year. I do know that there's been the outdoor dining has been extended through next March. Am I wrong about that, Katie, or am I right?
No, you're right about that, but it doesn't, last year, you could go in the streets and you could take parking places and you could just go do it. Not
Right.
so, not anymore. That's the change. Okay, so you could do a lease, you've got the space. To us, a tent is permanent when it's more than 2 weeks, is it, Katie?
Yes.
Okey doke. So
Okay, so
when you
what
go
would-
more than 2 weeks, you're asking for a permanent tent. How badly do you want to have a tent? Wouldn't you be happy with little chairs and tables?
No, are you kidding me? It's a killer.
I mean,
it really, all I'm asking for is to be able to get through this season of this summer season and into fall, to let us get through the season. And then, it's not something that I know fully well that it's not going to be a permanent thing. I know fully well that the tent is going to be an issue. I know fully well that come next season, when this executive order goes away and outdoor dining isn't automatically granted to all the restaurants in town, I do know that it's going to be an issue. All I'm trying to do is get through this season.
But the executive orders have gone away already. That's what the
On
chairman
the
said.
tent only though, right? Only on that, but they haven't gone away
Yeah.
on outdoor dining as a whole.
Well, yeah,
But do you need,
House bill.
wait,
so
wait,
it's
let
like-
Katie
it's like-
finish.
It's the executive orders. It's all very confusing, but there were executive orders. Now we're using a House bill, which is slightly different, and it doesn't give as much as the executive orders did. So it's
What doesn't it give me this year?
it doesn't give you just the ability to just do whatever, tables and tents and that kind of thing. So the tent now has to come under zoning.
Right.
So did the tables, by the way. So the commission adopted, so to speak, or revised the regulations to include the House bill. So they have some flexibility, but not the same flexibility that they were afforded under the executive orders.
I get that. So
But not
what
on the
do I have to do to be able to retain the tent for this season?
So you'd have to, first, it has to be in the same ownership. That's the big question is do you have the ownership issue sorted out? And then it's, coming in with the application to show a specific amount of time within which the tent would be up. So the regulation that I was just referring to is changed to say the outdoor dining for everybody, by the way, is through the end of November. I think it's November 20th specifically. So your application would come in and say, per this seating arrangement, I would like to have a tent through the end of November, and we have control over the property, and it's, ownership control over that property. It's not an easement, it's not a lease, whatever it is. And that is not an access way that is used for emergency purposes, or, you have to show that this is a viable location for the tent.
So can I just ask a question about that then, so I'm clear on what I need to provide? I need to, you need to see from my landlord, you need to see ownership of that alleyway, and you need to see from Erstad Biddle that I've signed an agreement with them to rent that additional 2 feet of space where the legs of my tent reside.
And then we have to agree to you having a tent for.
Well, I know that part. I know that part I know.
Is that
Okay, so let me give you something on this, Mr. Vignarti. I'm sure you go and you look at the restaurant scene in the city and see what's going on in the world. So the city is having a problem with what they allowed during COVID, because they got all those little booths that look like homeless shelters.
They're awful.
They're awful. So we're kind of fortunately, we didn't go as far. We came close and we reeled it back. But our concern is there's still a lot of people saying, oh, I'm going to have a tent and I'm going to do this. And we're a little concerned about the tent thing. Why would you want it this year and not anymore? It's almost, you're almost at the point where you don't need it, a tent. People are going indoors, right?
To a certain degree, they're actually starting not to anymore. I had an event that was booked for last week there just because there's supposedly some new uptick that's going on. So people are not as much. I'll
And you're
tell you,
looking at least two people in the commission who've had it in the last 2 weeks. So,
So
Peter
I
Lowe?
will honestly tell you that as far as, I mean, I own 2 restaurants in town, so I deal with this fairly regularly. And it is a fact that people are starting to get concerned about it again. I've had events
Okay.
cancel, I've had reservations cancel. Our Easter, which is generally rocking and rolling, was half of what we did in 2019, actually. And there were a lot of cancellations at the last minute because of that. And because we couldn't accommodate people with outdoor seating, we just didn't have space to put everybody outside.
Okay, so let me ask you another thing. If we let you do a tent, what do we do with every other restaurant in town that we've not let do a tent? That's the second problem, because everybody's going through the same thing. And and then Peter Lowe, if you want to ask your question. Go
Well,
ahead.
my question is, as we're entering the warm weather months,
Yeah.
Certainly with regard to Sound Beach Avenue facility, you have had the ability to have tables outside for going back to pre-COVID, correct?
Right. Correct.
Has that changed, Katie?
No. Well, if we let him have the alley space, which is, we were asking if we can clear up the alley space, he can have the service outside. It's just, and now we're stuck on the tent part.
Well, no, are we talking about Le Fat Poodle right? We're not talking about.
We're just talking about Poodle.
Right. So, but they have had the ability to put tables out there for years.
Yes.
Right.
But the tables were, I'm trying to remember where the Poodle tables were. You say it, Mr. Vignardi. Do you remember?
They've always been in that alley. We've always been approved to have a patio out in the alley.
That's my point. So if that is the case, that during the warm weather months, the only time arguably that you might be suffering is when there's rain, and right. I mean, you don't really need, or do you need a tent? I mean, it may be something you would like, but do you need a tent during the warm weather months in that outdoor space?
Do I need a tent in the warm weather months? Possibly not. Does it make for better dining conditions for my diners? Certainly does.
Yeah.
But only during the inclement weather, basically, right?
And what we've also learned, and one of the reasons why the tent was so helpful, and we went through the whole process of this. We filed with the building department, we did planning and zoning, we did all of this where we had our tent. We applied for the electrical, we applied for, because we had a heating unit that we had attached to the tent. So we went through the entire process of doing it correctly. And we also made sure that it wasn't just some ramshackle tent. I mean, we've landscaped it, there's flowers inside, there's lighting done appropriately. And it is on private property. So to answer the chairperson's question about that, I don't know. I mean, if the tent is on private property, like both of mine are, I mean, I do understand that at the end of the day, it comes down to the commission to approve it or not, but they're not on public land. We're not taking parking spaces. We're not taking space from retail stores on the avenue that would be giving up space for outdoor dining where then a tent would go up. This is on private property, both of them.
So one of the issues that came up yesterday was control of the land. Does the applicant own the property? And it was I thought suggested that you did not that the applicant did not own the property, and you just referred to a landlord a few moments ago.
Right. I'm the tenant. I have the lease on the property. I'm the tenant. I have the lease on this property.
I understand, but you do not own it. What is the Katie, Margarita? What was the distinction that we were trying to make yesterday about ownership of the property?
Well, whoever owns the property where the restaurant, the inside restaurant is, needs to be the same owner as the alley.
Which is exactly the case for us.
Yeah.
Which is exactly the case for us.
Okay, so here's what I would suggest to you, because you're here for a pre-app. You want the tent, you have to come in and do a full-on application. You just want to have a patio with tables and chairs, and you prove to Katie that you own the property and you have rights to it. That's all you got to do. You just go to Katie. Katie has authority to approve you as long as you're not doing a tent. You can do it, boom.
Wait, let me recap that. What you said, you just said that if I can
Right.
prove that
Did
we
I
own
say
the
it correctly?
property, then Katie
No.
can approve the tent?
Hold on. No, what I said was, you want to have a tent, you have to file up a site plan and come back and file it with us for the tent. If you
Okay.
want to have just the patio, all you have to do is prove to Katie that you have the ownership of that. Correct me, Katie, if I'm wrong.
You're right.
You have the ownership of that. You can set up your table and chairs and get going. And then you can decide if you want to go to all the trouble of filing to have a tent, because now you got to go through the whole process. I would almost tell you, given the fact that it's almost May now, I would say to you, why don't you wait until September and get the tent for the 2 months of the fall? Because right now you're about to get warm enough. In June and July, nobody's going to care whether or not you have a tent. And just do that, decide then. But if you, all you've got to do right now is if you split what you're trying to do, forget about the tents for now. Go to Katie, show her that you own the land. And you can just set up your tables and chairs and get going. Maybe you're going already, but get going. And you decide when you want to file the site plan for the tent and see how we do with it. We may not be totally happy, but take that chance when you're ready to come in for and apply for it. How about that? So get going with your, prove to Katie that you own the land. Go ahead, get set up and see if you really totally want to have that tent. And if you
Quick
do, you
question
come
for
in and
Katie.
apply for it.
Quick question for Katie.
Yeah.
Seating, is he required to actually take seats out of the existing restaurant to
Well,
put
that's the other
outside?
thing. Go ahead, Katie.
Well, we had said that, no, he wouldn't be required to do that if he comes in with the application under the House bill, which is now incorporated into our regulation, but it's not as loose as it was under the executive orders, meaning that they have to provide handicap accessibility, there has to be distance between the tables, that kind of thing.
Wait, Katie, can you say that again?
Yeah, it's not as loose as it was under the executive order. So, for example, now there has to be proven handicap accessibility in and around the tables and to the tables, just as, you know, one of the changes. So you just have to make sure that they're spaced accordingly.
And where would I find a list of these new regulations?
Oh, Katie can email them to you. Boom,
Yeah, I
just
can
like
I
that.
can send them to you now.
Okay. And so I'm going to quickly, I know Nick is going to hate that I'm going to do this. I'm going to quickly open 55 Lewis Street, and we're going to talk about them at the same time because you own both properties and we're telling you the same thing, the same answer. Prove that you own that area where you got the tables, because it's
And I
different
just
now.
correct you, it's, you have to show that you have a lease under the ownership. Okay.
No, it's actually not a lease. That's the problem. It can't be a lease. It has to actually be the same ownership. So he can't lease.
Right, under the same, a lease under the same ownership. But he's not really the owner, so it's a lease under the ownership.
Right, but the owner has to
earlier.
So he has to show that the properties that he's leasing is wholly owned by
that's
the
yes.
landlord.
Thank you. Yep.
He's got that.
And if I may back up here for a second, just, I mean, if we get, like, since we were on this whole thing started with the tent issue, and if we do decide to hold off until September, I don't know, I've got to speak to my business partner about this.
Sure.
But the one on 20 Arcadia Road, with that, so then essentially, if I was to be able to show you that I've got a lease with my landlord for 90% of that alleyway, and the other, whatever, 2% of it is with Erstad Biddle, and I have a lease with them as well. I made an arrangement with them.
Katie?
Where I'm paying rent for that. If I was able to show you both of those as they're both being leased to me, to La Belle Folie LLC, which owns La Fat Poodle at 20 Arcadia Road. If I could show you both those leases as leased to La Belle Folie for the alleyway, does that satisfy the requirement then?
Well, I can tell you that for the purpose of the commission that you know how we have that regulation that says you have to have parking in the same ownership. Well, people have come into the zoning enforcement officer and said, well, I've got 99% ownership, or I've got a full lease, or whatever it is. And he has consistently said that's not good enough. The regulation requires total ownership. So, technically that's not okay.
Well, how about
Okay,
an
look,
easement?
but-
Is there a different kind of configuration?
So that's
that would make it work, an easement?
Okay, so, but this is something that Mr. Vidyarthi can settle with Katie and not with the whole commission. Katie approves outdoor dining that doesn't have a tent, correct?
Yes.
So all you have to do is go to Katie and she will figure it out whether you can have the outdoor dining, forget about the tent momentarily, get your tables and chairs set up and get approval for your outdoor dining, because it's almost time. And then if you want to have the tent, you got to come back to us with a site plan application for both locations.
Okay, and on Lewis Street, that driveway is owned by, I think it's called 55 Lewis Street Association. They own the building, both the buildings on either side of the driveway, and that space is shared by 2 restaurants.
Yes, I know. We know
and
that.
the patio is also shared by the outdoor dining is shared by 2 restaurants in that space. It is leased to us individually by the same landlord. Each restaurant has their own lease with the landlord for a portion of that driveway.
All right. That's what you got to work out with Katie. What we're telling you is don't bother with the tents now because we're not crazy about them.
And
Is everybody okay? Go ahead.
Katie, were you going to say something? I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, so that sounds okay if the buildings and the land where you're putting the outdoor dining are all owned by one entity. That sounds okay. Just similar to what we're doing on Sound Beach, or excuse me, on Arcadia. It's the ownership structure sounds okay there. Because
okay,
it's
and if I wanted to pursue this idea of the tent, then I've got to file a site plan application and I've got to go through the whole process.
You got it.
Right.
Right away.
Yep.
I mean, the tents are still up. So as of now, until I do the site plan application, the tents have to come down?
Yes,
right
sir.
away?
Yes, you do, or we'll send you a violation. Sorry.
I got a parking ticket today. I don't want another violation.
Okay, we'll be nice and we'll let you take down the tent.
All right, Katie, I will be in touch because I've got to sort this out with you right away. So
thank you, Mr. Vidyarthi.
thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank
All
you.
righty. Oh, wait, did anybody from the public wish to comment on those applications?
Oh, and then also, and while I've got you, if you just Google Connecticut House Bill 5271.
Connecticut House Bill 5271.
Yeah, HB, it's HB 5271. Okay, does anybody from the public wish to comment on outdoor dining at Penguin and Fat Poodle? No. All right. Okay, Mr. Vidyarthi, I'm going to pull you out of the meeting.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Okie dokie. And so we're done and quick, let's get our decisions done.
Wait a minute. What happened to?
Oh my God, the affordable housing plan.
Yes. Hello.
Oh my God.
Don't you have anything to do with that? I mean, come on.
No. I
nothing
only write it when people, I only say I was part of the team when people are going to be nice to us. Okay, affordable housing plan, folks. Shall we have discussed it some among us? Should we ask if there's anybody from the public first?
Sure. What are we supposed to do this evening with that?
Eventually, we have to approve the affordable housing plan. Then it goes to the Board of Selectmen. When are we going to approve it, Katie? Because we have to submit it to the Board of Selectmen on the 12th of May.
Yeah, so we have the May 10th meeting.
Okay, and we'll approve it. Then it goes to the Board of Selectmen. Then it goes to the RTM for the June meeting. It has to be submitted to the RTM on the 20th of May. And
Can
all
we approve
along
it tonight?
Are we awaiting feedback from various entities?
Yes, we've just posted it on Sunday.
Right. So there has to be a little bit of a lag before we.
Yeah,
Well, I don't know about that. I don't know that we're awaiting feedback. It's out there and available for comment. And I think my sense is I would prefer that we take whatever comment comes our way.
Absolutely.
But, and solicit comment now, obviously from the public, if anybody wants to comment to us or
So-
from any of you.
Yeah, my point was that we have now submitted it publicly, and there has to be, at least 24 hours, give people a chance to react, right? That was all.
Look, Arn's paneling is breaking down.
Well, he's probably had enough. I know, I
His
understand.
paneling.
He's
I
melting.
know. You guys just don't like talking about dens. Okay, does anybody from the public wish to comment on the Greenwich Affordable Housing Plan? Does anybody from the public wish to comment on the Greenwich Affordable Housing Plan? Please raise your virtual hand. There's 33 people here. I don't know what they're here for.
They're hoping that we're going to bring up some other controversial subject, no doubt.
Okay, you mean other than tents? It's
Yeah.
been our tent night. Okay. We talked about the plan. We've talked about the plan twice, once at the Monday briefing, another time on Friday. Does anybody have new comments? Any changes people want to the plan? Okay, nobody has changes to the plan. I know Peter has sent in comments. Dennis has sent in comments. Nick has sent in comments. Bob, by the way, has been named the official custodian of the comments. He was volunteered.
Yeah. Bob, be careful of that.
And so I'll turn another draft of it. And I think we could post, I don't know that we want to post too many more. I think we want to get comments based on what's out there. Turn one more draft. Maybe the commission approves that at the next meeting.
Yeah, that would be great, Bob. What happened, and I wrote you this at one point, what we need to be careful about, the lesson Katie and I learned when we did the POCD is somebody had a meltdown because they were looking at the wrong draft.
Sure.
And so what you want to do is keep it nice and clean so everybody has the same draft for as long as possible.
Right. That makes a lot
Okay,
of sense.
so you don't have any comments, anybody? In that case, we have no further discussion on this item. Francisco is making it pretty. What's his deadline?
I just wrote them and asked for May 5th, so we'll see what happens.
Okay.
Good.
All right. Okay. So now we can make decisions?
Yeah, I
Yes,
guess
please.
so.
Yes.
Okay, so
Okay.
what are we doing here? Not
We have-
Audubon, that was tossed out.
All right.
Byron
we-
Shore Road? No.
No,
We're
we
waiting for-
have, the only ones we have are 44 Cutler.
Mm.
Then we have Mead Point and whether or not we're ready to do King.
Okay. Let's do Cutler, get that out of the way, and then we can talk about the other ones.
Okay.
I forgot about those other two. Okay, 44 Cutler Road, application PLPZ 2022-44. Final site plan special permit, applicant seeking approval to construct additions and alterations to a single-family dwelling that would exceed 150,000 cubic feet in a building volume and exceed the 12,000 square foot, 1,200 square foot accessory structure in the RA4 zone. We have zoning, health, and engineering, conservation, and wetlands issued a permit, application and a permit. So therefore, a motion to approve the application under the following. Prior to zoning permit, the applicant shall refine the proposed landscape plan with more native species. The plan is to be reviewed by P&Z staff. And the applicant shall address any and all remaining staff or interdepartmental issues.
Do I have a second for that?
Second.
I think Levy's got it. Mr. Yeski, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Levy,
Aye.
Mr. Lowe,
Aye.
and Mr. McRae.
Aye.
Albin is also aye, and with that, the motion passes 5-0. I'm going to save you guys a little time. If you guys don't mind, I'll do Mead really quickly. And what I'd like to do is, I wrote all the boilerplate, but it's 3 pages long. And you know what the boilerplate says. I can email it to everybody. Katie, just tell me what's legal. But what I'd like to do is just tell you what the conditions that I would propose are. That's the key thing, what we're asking for above and beyond. So the conditions of approval would be that pursuant to the concerns raised by DEEP on March 29th regarding the project's consistency with CAM, the public access to the area shall be maintained and not diminished. Moreover, since DEEP has opined that the area within the portion of Long Island Sound enclosed by the construction of an unauthorized causeway berm continues to be part of the Sound and therefore within the state's public trust, there will be no signs claiming the public area as private. The applicant is further required to work with P&Z staff and agree on means of notifying the public of its use rights. That's the first condition of approval. The second condition would be that the applicant shall submit logistics and phasing plans for both the excavation and construction portions of the project. Third, the applicant shall preserve and maintain the vegetative buffer required per section 6111D of the building zone regulations, and the planting shall be predominantly native species and salt tolerant. Fourth, pursuant to the special permit standards under 617, which in this case are the preservation of the natural environment and open space and other features, as well as the preservation of architectural and historical cultural assets, the applicant shall submit the final tree assessment and protection plan to the planning and zoning staff for review, submit a full report and protection plan for the greatest conservation need species that potentially use the site for breeding or during migration. This report is to be prepared by a qualified biologist who has surveyed the woodlands for songbirds and the beachfront for oyster catchers and nesting terrapins during their breeding season. Finally, the applicant shall follow the recommendations of Ernest Vigand, archaeologist, in his report dated February 26, 2022. Any other outstanding staff and departmental comments are to be addressed. And with that, I would move approval of the final coastal site plan and special permit at 618 Indian Field Road or 0 Indian Field Road to construct a single family dwelling with pool and cabana, which would in total have volume of over 295,000 cubic feet. The rest I have done is I've got the boilerplate that it has the zoning sign off, the ZEO, IWWA, health, that we've reviewed the coastal buffer. I've incorporated all of the Connecticut DEEP comments, the conservation comments in which they ask for the things we put into this conditions. And I listed the special permit standards, and I can email this to you because I actually typed it. Do you want me to read all 2 pages?
Yeah, no, yeah, you have to read it, but you have to either refer, which I think you just did. So you can't just say boilerplate. So you're referring to documents that are in the record that are comments from other departments. And if you could just say which ones those are again, and you want us to.
Yes, ma'am. I will do that. I was trying to let Dennis go to sleep. The ZEO issued comments dated 12/16/21. Indicating the site plan meets zoning regulations. DPW engineering issued comments 3/7/22, listing items to be addressed prior to zoning permit, which includes certain revisions to the plans and the drainage report, and requesting signed copies of the subdivision map, drainage maintenance agreements, and easement. IWWA has indicated on 10/15/21 that there are only tidal wetlands present and no permit is needed. The Health Department confirmed its 2017 approval of a 10-bedroom septic system as on 11/8/21. The applicant has submitted a preliminary tree assessment, which we have called for in the conditions to be, and was dated originally the 2nd of February. We are asking for the final. In that report, they have told us they are removing 151 trees and they are adding 140 trees and 1,088 shrubs. We have found that the proposed landscape plan meets the requirements of section 6111D. And then I have included here that although the commission originally received from DEEP on 12/15/21 an email expressing no concern regarding the project's consistency with the State Coastal Management Act, that on 3/29, DEEP sent an email raising the issue of the illegal enclosure of that tidal pond and how that area should continue to maintain public access. And that is it. And with that,
Quick question. So in your finding that this, and just correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought in the finding that this meets 6-111, 6-139, 615, and 617 with the modifications that you just went through. Is that correct?
Yes,
So
ma'am.
one question that I had is the document or the report that you requested that's going to be prepared by the qualified biologist, that's to protect the greatest need species during construction. So you want them to, what was the report going to say?
This is a conservation request, and we have the entire quote from her in here. They requested the greatest needs for species, that they be identified and protected always, that a protection, a long-term, why don't I amend that to say a long-term protection plan?
Okay.
Because there would be no point. So I will make that change in it. I'm amending it to say a long-term protection plan. I kind of hesitated on this, but they asked for it, and we have the right to ask for it within the special permit.
So, I mean, it's obviously understanding that the building as proposed will move forward, but it's a protection of the site based on this report from the qualified biologist about things that they could do to make sure that the greatest need species are identified and protected in the long run.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Is that okay with everybody?
Yes.
All right.
Just a quick procedure question. I don't know if I'm still seated on this. I don't know
I
if there's any
don't
way we can check
believe
it.
you are. Hold on. It's
Okay.
is in the agenda.
I was looking in the agenda. I can't find it, but
Oh, well, that's easy, because I've got hold on. No, you are not seated, and I believe
Okay.
Arn is seated for you.
very good.
But let me just double check, because I meant to do that earlier. This is the one where they forgot to put who was seated in the agenda.
I know, I just saw that, yeah.
Okay, hold on, because I've got the agenda for that meeting here, and I have a note on it. And it says,
Maybe Bob remembers.
no, Bob was not here. Bob wasn't seated. Arn was seated for Nick.
Okay.
Okay, is that as you remember it, Arn? That's my note.
Yeah, that's as I remember it.
Okay. All righty.
Can I add one more condition
Absolutely,
since I am
yes.
seated, or
Yes,
proposed
sure.
condition?
Yes, of course.
Can we also ask condition that the applicant provide evidence that the bridge connecting the unauthorized berm or causeway, to the land was authorized?
They did provide that evidence because
They did?
Yeah, what happened was there was evidence that it was not approved when it was constructed, but then there was evidence from there was evidence that they did approve the repair of it in 2013, I think it was. So there was an approval by planning and zoning staff based on approval from the state for said work. So it's, I mean, you know, it's, you
It was
can't now say that it wasn't.
the fact acknowledged. It was just an acknowledgement after the fact, basically, right? And so they went back
Well,
and said,
are we talking about the same bridge? I'm not talking about the causeway that was approved that connects Brush Island to the mainland. I'm not talking about that causeway. I'm talking about the causeway that almost entirely encloses that harbor that is public waters. That causeway.
Yeah, I think that's the one I'm talking about. Yeah, so
Okay.
there was, right, the one that kind of makes that public area feel less public.
Okay, so there was specific authorization to fix the bridge because it got hurt during the storm.
Right, so there was,
Okay.
right, was a repair, I believe. So we'll we
Because
can,
I don't remember any discussion of the bridge. I do remember, you know, riprap being added there, retain the riprap and stuff, but no specific mention of the bridge.
but hasn't Margarita included language here to acknowledge this and to insist upon?
That's on the illegal one. On the one, there's one that the planning and zoning staff, and this is in the decision, issued an email on 11/1/21 approving a soil and erosion control measures, emergency soil and erosion control measures to prevent further erosion. You're talking about the access causeway.
No, I'm not.
Oh, you're talking about the illegal one. Oh, yeah,
Right,
it's
that's-
illegal. It's totally illegal. There's
I understand that, Margarita.
Okay.
I'm not.
Sorry.
I'm talking about the bridge that connects the illegal causeway with the rest of the land.
And what do
I
you
would
want to
like
do with it? Yes.
I want evidence that that bridge was authorized at some point.
Katie, can we
And
do that?
not after the fact, not that, you know, it got hurt and
Prior to zoning permit.
right.
Prior to zoning permit. The applicant shall provide evidence. So prior to zoning permit, the applicant shall provide evidence that the bridge connecting the unpermitted causeway.
Yeah, to the rest of the property.
Okay,
And
all right.
now you see where I'm going with this, or do I need to?
Well,
Open
the second shoe has to fall. What are we going to do with that evidence?
Well, then it's our decision if they can't provide the evidence. I have some views on that.
So Katie,
and
how
I
would
can
we
share them
write
with the
that?
commission.
here's the problem. So in the comment, it says, unfortunately, neither certificate or any subsequent certificate or permit on file applicable to this property includes an authorization to construct the causeway outlined in yellow, which is the one you're referring to. In 2013, this is what I was referring to before. In 2013, the certificate of permission was issued to retain riprap that had been placed along the causeway to protect it from storm damage and to authorize work to and around the bridge at the western end of the causeway. Even if the causeway had been authorized, such authorization would likely not have created a new privately owned tidal water body, particularly since the vast majority of it was not created by excavating private land. So basically, we don't have the jurisdiction, I don't think. Once something's been created, once there's land there, then, you know, what's there to be a bridge over? I mean, do you see what I'm saying? Like, so it's confusing whether it sounds like it's supposed to come from the state, but they then authorize permission to retain the riprap.
Yeah, but let's not, why are we talking about the riprap? We're talking about a bridge. And what is the bridge doing? The bridge is going over a body of water. So the question is, where is the authorization for that bridge?
There isn't one and there will never be. And so the question is, you're really saying that you want the bridge removed?
Absolutely.
That's what he's really saying.
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's allow the public to get in there Peter Levy's already said you can't go in there against the tide. I think it's dangerous.
I don't even think you can go in there when the tide is up because the bridge is too low then. But
exactly.
But
maybe you could get a small whaler in there, which would be safer. I don't think it's safe.
So your condition is quite simply
no, you
that
can't get anything in there.
you want that bridge removed. We can ask
Absolutely.
for that. Okay.
Well, that's a very interesting point. I mean, how do you really create access to this public waterway?
Well, that's okay. So what we did in that one we solved with this. We said that the applicant has to meet with P&Z staff and figure out how it's going to be clear that there's public access there.
Right. So one of the ways is you put in signage so that you can say that, very simply that
right.
That this is public waters. But then that begs the question of how you actually get in there. So,
but what Arne is saying is you need to establish that this bridge was warranted to begin with.
No, you don't need to establish that. It's not legal. We know that. They built the whole thing without any permits. So if y'all want it gone, that's what you do, because nobody can prove it was legal. You're just making work for yourselves if you ask someone to show it's legal, because they're going to tell you it's not.
Well, fine. If we have the power to do it, I support Arne in this.
Yeah. I'm good with that. I wrote it in. Prior to zoning permit, the applicant shall provide evidence that the bridge connecting the unpermitted causeway to the rest of the property has been removed.
Right, but by removing that, you don't really create access.
No, but then we have the separate, but all we can
do.
do.
The whole picture. It doesn't solve everything.
Peter Levy, but we've got a solution for the second part, which is that we say that the applicant will work with the P&Z staff and agree on a means of notifying the public of its use rights.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Right.
And so we're just plunking the problem on Katie and Patrick and Bianca.
Yeah, which frankly, I mean, I think this is going to be problematic. I really
they're gonna put a little sign up that says public property.
No, I'm not. I'm not worried about. I'm worried about removing. What I think I hear you saying is that you want the entire riprap area and the entire.
No, just the bridge.
No,
just the bridge.
Stop.
The bridge.
Please do not continue talking about riprap. We're not talking about that. We're just talking about the bridge. Riprap's something completely different.
The bridge,
just
Katie.
The bridge.
The little wooden bridge.
The little wooden bridge, the little red wooden bridge, not the riprap.
It serves as a deterrent for anyone to enter that little safe harbor.
Exactly.
See, this is what happens when you let the commission do a site walk. We've all been on the little stupid bridge, and
that's why I think it makes more sense to have some kind of path over the land that allows people access.
No,
but
absolutely not.
That, right? You can't do it.
No, because I'd be walking on Tudor Jones's property or something.
Well, you put a gate in.
Here's a question then. The question, you're saying that portion of it should not be approved. And if they want to come back in with an application for the bridge, then they can do so. But right now, you're saying it should be removed. And if they want to come in with an application in the future to put the bridge there.
Actually, they're saying something different. The bridge has been there for like 60 years. They're saying they want it gone because it prevents the public from coming in from the water side. That's what they're saying.
Coming in from the water side by boat.
But
you can't get in. They're blocking the public from accessing by having that bridge. That's
not in a practical way, because there's no boat that can go through there.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, maybe you can get a kayak through there, but it's not deep enough for a boat.
So we have added Arne's condition. Poor Dennis is going to slap you in a minute. He's right next to you.
Don't blame this on
Please,
me.
Dennis. No.
Don't blame this. I'm with Arne. If he wants to put this condition in, I'll support it.
Okie dokie. All right, Katie.
Clear, you're moving a little red bridge so that a boat can get through, knowing that a boat can't get through.
No, to be clear.
No,
that bridge blocks. No. You got to ignore them when they get silly. What they're saying is the bridge blocks and makes it look like it's private property, and it makes it look like it's not open to the public, and that's why they don't like it. because they stood there and they're looking at it. I watched them looking at the bridge.
It's not
That's
even a
the thing.
question of making it look like it. It is an absolute deterrent to the public, and the public owns that space, period.
Right.
All right, so I second what Margarita's added to the
Should I
motion.
say that the commission finds that the bridge is a deterrent?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
deterrent
so
to the
the-
public access to the,
Right. And
Further-
and also you should note that there's no dispute at all that the land area that the water area is part of the public trust.
Oh, I quoted the whole deep
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
The whole deep thing. That's why I took the time to type it all, and that's why it took me 2 weeks to write it.
Right, but whatever you've got typed, you have to say, because just saying you've got something typed doesn't mean anything. You
I
have
was
to-
trying to let them go
Yeah.
to sleep. Now
you've
I've read them the whole
referenced-
thing.
But you've referenced all of the documents, like the health and the DPW and the ZEO, but if there's some finding or whatever, then you need to make it now.
The commission further finds that the existing bridge between the connecting the unpermitted causeway to the rest of the property is a deterrent to public access and shall be removed prior to zoning permit.
And you already have in there, I'm sorry to belabor this, but you already have in there language that addresses appropriate signage, right?
Yes, yes. There are two things. It says.
Okay, no, you just say yes, that was good.
Okay.
All
right. Because I read it fast because I was trying to let you guys go to sleep.
No,
My
that's fine.
mistake.
We're
There
over that.
shall be no signs claiming the public area is private. The applicant is further required to work with P&Z staff and agree on a means of notifying the public of its use rights.
Yeah.
That is directly from the deep letter, by the way.
Perfect.
Right.
Katie.
Perfect.
Are we in public right now? Is this being recorded?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, just because we
We're
sound
in
like we're
decision mode.
insane.
We got 30 odd people still hanging in there, listening to this dribble.
Because we sound like we're insane. Yeah. Okay. Now, are you guys set then? Yes, Katie?
Yeah, I'm just worried. So every finding that you want to make is being stated. So there's not some document that's going to be sent to staff after the fact or whatever. I mean, everything that you're stating for the record that you've wanted to put in your findings has been said, correct?
The only thing that I didn't read out loud was that in 2016, the P&Z Commission denied a subdivision application without prejudice, which was later approved through ZBA.
Histories, yeah.
The whole
we're not
history.
adding new into the record, anything obviously.
Okay, nothing else. There are no other findings. We had the findings that we cite the conservation request for both the natural, the needy species, and also the conservation request for the archaeology. And then we cite the special permit standards that apply to this application, the concerns raised by DEEP.
And you've made the sweeping statement already that you believe that you made the finding that it complies with 615-17, 6-111.
Yes.
6-139.1.
Yes.
With the modifications that you just outlined.
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I second.
I think Yeski's got it by a
You got
nano
it.
nose.
Give it to Yeski.
All right.
Give it to Yeski.
Okay. Mr. Wells, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Yeski?
Let me think about it. Aye.
Mr. Lowe?
Aye.
Mr. Levy?
Aye.
And Albin is also aye. Okay, now let's have the same fight about King Street.
Wait, we don't have more, do we?
We have one more and we left the hardest to the
You
end.
miss one meeting and the whole thing goes pear-shaped. I'm telling
Am
you.
I seated or not?
You
No,
have to
not
stay
on-
regardless.
I can go back to sleep?
Yeah, you can go back to sleep.
Let me ask you a question. Was I allowed to read Patrick's email? Didn't
Which
we
one?
close this and we're not supposed to get new information?
Yeah, you weren't allowed to read Patrick's email.
Oh, thank God. Guess what?
No, you are allowed to read Patrick's email as long as it doesn't contain external information. Does it contain external or just a summary of everything we had done?
No, it has recommendations and what they're gonna do.
Oh, the request, it was the thing about the drainage.
Yeah, isn't that one of your issues?
No.
The staff can confer with the commission. It's nothing that's being added to the record. If you have a question of staff as to how to phrase something, whatever, that's between you and staff.
Yeah, the bad news, Dennis, you have to stay on here.
No, I'm interested to see what new conditions are gonna be proposed.
Yeah, when we asked Nick if he was going to write it, I said to him afterwards, I said, well, you're worrying about funeral arrangements, and plus the commission's gonna like make you crazy on King Street.
Let's try. And
Okay.
Let's get there, because this is a composition in 3 parts.
Yeah,
So we've got a text amendment and a zoning map and a site plan, right?
Okay, now, seated on this one? They didn't put it in the decision thing, did they?
No.
And the last time we heard it was on the 12th. And
$100, I'm not seated anywhere, right?
no, you're seated on this one. We wouldn't have made you write the decision.
Nuts.
Furthermore, you popped right up as soon as we finished the last one.
Oh, he was listening. He's allowed to listen.
Sitting here
all right.
drinking my tea.
Katie,
You can't make faces, that's all.
Katie, this doesn't have who's seated on 1141 King. It doesn't say it in the April 12th agenda.
For what it's worth, my notes do not reflect me as being seated, and I make.
No,
that-
I don't have that you guys either one. So it's the regulars, because my notation is that it's all regulars. Yeah, all regulars. Okay, thank you. I like that Bob keeps that record.
Well, for the record, the irregulars have to stay here in case something happens.
Yes, we used to let them leave in the old days.
And
I
then
know, but
nobody more irregular than me and Orange. So just watch what you do.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
speed it up too, please.
Come on, Mac Wright.
And away we go. Text
These
amendment.
guys are
conservation-
punchy.
This is for text amendment for 1114 King Street, right? That's what we're doing?
Yes,
Yeah, we got this, okay.
I think it's 1141.
1141 King Street, text
Yeah.
amendment, conservation zones, PLPZ 2021 503. The amendment will modify section 623C, 623C, 626, and 631C of the building zone regulations. The commission finds that suggested revisions are in keeping with objectives 1.2, 2.4, and 4.1 of the 2019 POCD. Therefore, a motion to approve the text amendment as revised.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Levy,
All right. Mr. Yeski, how do you vote?
Can I go last?
Sure, you can go last. Mr. Levy, how do you vote?
I,
Aye, was that an aye?
yes, I,
Okay, Mr. Lowe,
Aye.
Mr. McRae,
aye.
Albin is also aye. Mr. Yeski?
I guess aye.
All right.
I thought that's unusual.
Wait, it was Lowe, Levy, Albineski, and McRae, right? Okay.
Yeah, it was unanimous.
Yeah.
All right, McRae, the next one.
Okay, Plaza 200 LLC at 1141 King Street for zoning map amendment, PLPZ 2021 504. Whereas the applicant is seeking a zoning map amendment to rezone a 19.1385 acre property from RA4 to the RACC4 zone at 1141 King Street. The commission finds that the applicant has satisfied the procedure for zoning map amendment. Therefore, a motion to approve this application for a zoning map amendment as proposed.
Do I have a second?
And it's in keeping with the plan of conservation.
Conservation and development. God, I forgot that. Okay.
Great.
Okay, so we found it's keeping in the plan with conservation. Yes. Do I have a second?
second,
Mr. Levy has seconded. Mr. Yeski?
Aye.
Levy,
Aye.
Lowe,
Aye.
McRae,
Aye.
Albin is also aye. Now we come to the tough one. So that's 5-0, Katie, on the map amendment. So we now have a map amendment and a text amendment, and we are going to go to the site plan.
Okay, hold your applause till I get to the end, and then we can come back and fix it as you want. Okay, so this is 1141 King Street, application PLPZ 2021-0502, final site plan and special permit. The applicant is seeking final site plan and special permit to approval to create a conservation cluster subdivision with 5 detached dwellings, a greenhouse shed, and tennis court on a 19.13 acre parcel located at 1141 King Street in the RACC4 zone. Whereas the applicant requested and received approval for a text amendment under application PLPC 2021-503, and the applicant requested and received approval for a zoning map amendment under application PLPZ 2021-502. Commission finds that zoning enforcement issued comments on 1/24/2022, indicating the proposal meets the requirements of the BZR and endorse the project for zoning permit sign off. Engineering issued comments dated 04/10/22 and a follow-up email dated 04/2022, any conditions to the proposed plan. Conservation issued comments on 3/24/2022, indicating concerns on outstanding issues. Health Department issued comments dated 2/11/22, indicating on-site sewage approval for each of the proposed buildings by number 1 through 5. ARC issued comments at their January 19th, 22 requesting return to a meeting.
ARC?
Yeah, well, let's get to that because that's what I found in my notes. So they were requesting return and I didn't find anything else after that. Wetlands, the applicant received final approval on 3/28/22 meeting under permit number 2022-029. Therefore, motion to approve final site plan noting the following. Prior to zoning permit submittal, remember the word submittal, and per engineering division recommendation, the existing swale channel on the eastern property line has areas of debris that may be causing the swale channel to not function as originally designed. The applicant shall remove the debris from the existing swale channel and regrade the area to the channel as needed before they even submit a review for a zoning building permit sign off. Verification of the existing swale channel repair and proof of it working in order shall be submitted. The project engineer is to include the design revisions stated in the April 20th email memo so as to direct any runoff from the wetland area to the existing swale channel. Per Health Department comments, the applicant shall demonstrate specifics on wrong one. Prior to zoning permit, the applicant shall return to ARC for final review of landscape and lighting. Per conservation memo, any and all of the 5 outstanding recommendations shall be addressed, and per the conservation memo, the 8 recommended conditions shall be addressed and included in the final zoning permit submittal. Prior to zoning permit, the applicant shall submit for a record a construction phasing plan. Submittals for each P&Z staff zoning permit application for each resident shall reference the final site plan and conditions there set on. The applicant shall adhere to the conditions set out as the in the 3/28/22 wetlands approval. Per wetlands approval conditions, the applicant can remove the wood chips in the wetland area prior to May 1st of this year. We are talked about riding trails. I had mentioned it here, but I'm not too sure exactly what you'd like to say on that. Another one.
Just that they had agreed to remove that rock, the boulder,
Okay.
to provide access to the trails.
Okay.
I think they're 2 boulders, right? Was there only one, Kate? I don't know.
Okay,
I
so
thought
they're,
it was one, or it was
Just
just,
one.
yeah, the provide access to the trails pretty much is, yeah.
Right.
okay, so they're gonna remove any obstructions and provide continued access to the trails. Okay. Okay, now, this is something that I think had been bandied about, but let's talk about this. The commission encourages the applicant to reduce the size of the residences to approximately 7,500 square feet in FAR. And the commission encourages the applicant to relocate the community tennis courts closer to the residences after reducing each of the residence size approximately 70 to 7,500 square feet. And the applicant shall address any and all remaining staff or interdepartmental issues. So going back up to the top. The first one prior to
I have
zoning
a
permit.
question. Can I just ask you more?
Yeah,
Are we concerned with the total FAR or making sure that the houses in general just aren't any bigger? Because what if they want to build, one that's 10,000 and one that's 6,000? Do we care about that?
Yeah, I think we do. I think we should have smaller overall houses. That they should all be smaller and that they should all be a little less aggressive in the development.
Right, but I think my point is that maybe there's a marketing issue here that they're worried about. So if they think that a larger house is more marketable, I kind of would like to give them the benefit of the doubt and make them, figure out how to.
Okay, well,
so I'm just wondering what you think. I'm not saying.
Following that idea, there's 5 houses. They're all approximately 9 to 10,000 square feet. I think what the statement was is that it's encouraging them to build houses of approximately 7,500 square feet. But understanding that, and what you're saying, Peter, say it's 5 houses at 10,000 each, so that's 50,000, right? Per total FAR. So they could build one that's 12,000 and one that's smaller than that, just as long as they don't exceed 50,000 square feet.
Yes, but I think that we have a problem with the 50,000. So, so in other words, if we think that 50,000 is pushing the limit on the FAR that we want on this property, should we say that it should be 45 kind of thing? I mean, that's what I want to, I didn't know if we would really broach that before or not. I thought we might have.
I think it's actually, it's as part of the conservation cluster zone. Katie, if it's my understanding, they have a maximum FAR that they cannot exceed that beyond whatever that number was, which I don't remember.
Right, but it's 20, it's percentage over the FAR. That's the incentive, and that's one of the incentives.
Right, but there's a maximum. Once they go through the calculation of the available land and the incentive, there's a maximum FAR.
Yes.
Okay, so that's actually, is that, Peter, what you're talking about. And I'm just going to say, as an example, 50,000 square feet of FAR, they have taken advantage of it. There's 5 houses, each one of them is 10. But they could use, as the example again, 50,000. One of them is 12. One of them is smaller than 10,000. So it still kind of works out that way. I think what this statement I'm putting here is that we're looking for each one of the individual houses to be smaller than they're actually proposing.
Right. And that's, I was just wondering if there's a way to put it so it didn't sound like we were taking away, every time you take off, if you reduce the FAR, that's real money that you're, from.
Okay.
So I would just
Just
know
that-
if there's another way to put it that where it would be a little bit more suggestive that they could moderate what they're doing, but maybe not.
Okay, just a statement I was making, but I'd like to go back to the top of the drainage. I
Yeah,
think that
no, read the sentence again on the size.
The commission encourages the applicant to reduce each of the residence size to approximately 7,500 square feet of FAR.
I think the word's got to be a whole lot stronger than encourages, because if you're just encouraging, they're just going to go, okay, I was encouraged and now I'm done. We want to reduce the size of the buildings. We got to make it a modification of the approval of the application.
Okay, so instead of encourage, what would you?
The application is hereby modified. In rendering this approval, the commission modifies this application such that the FAR, the square footage of any individual building shall not exceed, and then pick a number.
Okay.
And you have to obviously tie that into the environmental impacts that a larger building would have.
And the consistency with the objectives of the cluster zone, which is why we kept asking Mr. Hegney, and why every time he asked, we said, not totally convinced yet, right? That's what we were saying, right? So if you look at the objectives of the zone, you're saying pursuant to the, I'm trying to turn, what's the number again on it?
34, I think it is.
God, we're really a barrel of monkeys tonight, aren't we?
Not 30. The
6134, right? No.
No, it's 34. Excuse me, it's 23.
6-23.
That's the purpose, yeah.
All right. So what the findings are is that for us, and this is the question for everybody, do we feel that this does, by shrinking the buildings, that we protect, that we preserve and maintain the existing character and setting of a site, and preserve, and so that's a one phrase, and then it's and to preserve vistas and streetscapes. So do we believe that the character of the site is better maintained with a smaller buildings? That's what we would be referencing.
Is to preserve the vistas.
No, preserve and maintain the existing character and setting of the site.
Yeah.
To better maintain the existing character and setting of a site. The citation on that is 623 C1.
Right.
And that is, hold on, I'm just making sure. And that is just the conservation zone's purpose generally, so that we're good there. The preserve and
C1.
C1, to preserve and maintain the existing character and setting of a site. And so what we're saying is, now the other question is, can we encourage the applicant that should the new site plan allow that they relocate the tennis court? How strongly do you guys feel about that tennis court?
We had a lot of discussion about it, its placement.
I think it's actually it's up to site plan, because if they reduce the buildings to a certain size, will they have enough room to actually move the tennis court, et cetera?
And so
to
in
another
that
location?
one, we would strongly encourage them to move it.
Strongly?
Yeah, because I don't think we can mandate they move it, because they kept telling us they didn't have a spot for it, even if they made the building smaller.
Okay. How
Yeah,
small do you want these houses to be?
I don't know. Levy, what do you think? I'm going to pick on you because you're the second architect here. What do you think?
Right. So, well,
I mean, they've got
it's a
10,000 square
tough,
foot house.
you know,
It's a tough one. I know
it's a
Greenwich.
tough one. And I think it's an odd thing to do in this manner.
I know, but we couldn't get them to do it any other way. We tried. We kept saying, can you make the houses 8,000 square feet? That was my number.
Well, what if we say we say that we want them to reduce it by 10%, the FAR by 10% kind of thing?
Because the FAR, because I think it's the square footage of the houses, not the FAR that's the problem.
Yeah, here's the thought, guys, because
Go.
Nick proposed 7,500 a house. Peter objected because, you know, that they might want some houses bigger, some smaller. So what about giving them a total of 5 times 7,500, which is 37,500 worth of housings, and however they want to split it up, they can.
Yeah.
Arne, are you seated on this?
No.
No.
You can't talk.
Sorry. I'll disappear.
But it was a really good suggestion.
The jury will disregard those comments.
All right. So Nick, why don't we say that the applicant,
Been there.
so the applicant shall, the
Why don't we
applicant,
say there can't be more than 137, whatever he said.
no, he didn't say anything. He wasn't talking. So we're going to do, Nick, you're being quiet.
Yeah, I'm looking at the site plan application. It's
Yeah.
I think if I got the right number, it's 50,256.
Can we go? I'm good
Square
with 40.
feet.
An age.
I'm good with 40.
40, okay.
That
So-
gives them,
I certainly wouldn't go any lower. I don't think.
yeah. An
It's-
8,000
at
square
the end of the
foot
day,
house is a big
At the end of
house.
the day, it's arbitrary. So, but we're making kind of an arbitrary decision here, so.
I mean, the smallest one is 8,813 and the largest one is 10,457, and then 3 of them are 9,700. And 5.
So you want to call it an even 8 and change?
Okay. Do 8.
Madam
But I
Chairwoman?
mean, obviously they have this set up, I mean, just for the sake of argument, they have this set up where they have one big house at 10,000 and then one small house at 8,800, and then they've got some in between. So to Peter's point, there's an overall FAR. Do you want to give them the flexibility to make one bigger house and then a couple of smaller ones? 'Cause the
40,000.
overall- Yeah, the overall is 50,256. So,
And I'm saying 40,000.
yeah.
It's not a huge change.
Well, it
20%.
materially changes things, but and to take, I mean, you're reducing it the size of one house. That's a lot. But so I think I would be inclined to give them a little bit more, but anyway, that was my thought, to use like a total number as opposed to saying.
I propose 40,000. Peter, you can live with that, right?
That's what Margarita proposed.
Yeah.
That's okay. I'm re-proposing.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get us through the night and through this application.
Yeah.
And
Okay,
Peter,
so-
you were on record as saying, well, that would be the lowest or something, but okay, let's go with it.
Okay.
So as a revision to this, applicant shall reduce each of the individual residence sizes so as not to exceed a maximum of 40,000 square feet of FAR, keeping with the intent of the conservation cluster zone for section 6, 23C1. Does that work?
Yes. Okay, now
So
let's go. Yes.
They're going to reduce the sizes of the houses, but it's up to them which house gets reduced and how much.
Right.
So they can still do a 10,000 and they can still do a small one and then whatever's in between. That
Right.
works for you guys? Okay.
Yeah,
Riding
they could
trails,
do a 10 and a 5 and.
If
3.
they feel that they need a 10,000 one, that puts a big crimp in, and they're going to have a pretty small house residual. So,
Right.
you know, so I think, you know, reducing it a good 1,000 or, you know, 1,200 square feet per house is a little bit more reasonable. So it'd go closer to 45 because I understand what the housing market is like and what they're looking for. But that's my thought.
Let's compromise, 42.5.
Okay, there you go. Okay.
42.5 going once, 42.5 going twice.
I don't like it.
Okay,
No,
there we
no.
go.
I don't like it. Why can't we just do 8?
Okay, thanks.
So,
right.
40 then.
Yeah,
40,000.
yeah.
No, but eight is different than 40, right? You're saying no one house is larger than 8. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm giving them a total of 40.
Oh,
They
okay.
can do it any way they want.
Yeah,
I
and
second it.
Yeah.
Is that all the points?
Yep.
Okay.
And then, Mr. Macro, you mentioned obviously the prior to zoning permit, they fixed the swale, and then after that, when they come in for the houses, you had said that they should come in with one soil and erosion control plan on the assumption that they're building all of them at one time.
Right. So yeah, two parts of it is one is the complete site plan, soil and erosion, so on and so forth for the whole site. Okay, and then the second part would be that each one of the buildings comes back, but each one of the buildings would reference the whole site plan as a whole.
Okay.
And so if they did them at one time, they're good to go. If they did them individually, it would still be consistent all the way through.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then this is prior to the zoning permit submittal, they're going to fix the swale and the channel.
Right.
Because right now it's basically kind of agreed that there's kind of debris and so on and so forth, and they need to be cleaned out. And in conjunction with that, wetlands had a condition about removing the wood chips in the wetland area before May 1st. So that's included. Okay, and there's another one in here. Now, the ARC thing, I found just that
Yeah,
ARC.
they saw it and they were worried about the lighting. I remember that.
Okay, so they're gonna go back prior to zoning permit on that?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Just for the lighting, they were okay with the landscaping in the buildings.
Okay, just for lighting.
And we're still recommending moving that tennis court.
Yes, and that would be basically is if they have that, commission strongly encourages applicant to relocate the committee to tennis court closer to their residences after reducing each of their residence sizes. So what happens with the 40,000, if they can move it, they move it. Okay, wetlands permit, P&Z zoning staff permit for each of the residences, reference the final site plan. Zoning permit application submitted for a record of construction phasing plan. Conservation memo, ARC. Project engineers to include design revisions stated in the April 20 email. That's from engineering, and fixing the swale channel. Anything else?
Katie, are we requiring enough return on this in case there's something that's really not what wetlands thought? That's my biggest, deepest concern.
Enough return, meaning that we'll be able to catch it during zoning permit, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think we're covered because
Okay.
I think we're okay with the way that Mr. Mack represented it.
I think with the wetlands permitted, they have their conditions, both standard and unique. So, they've got a bunch of things they've got to do for wetlands. And I think right now, one of the biggest things we had seen was that the channel swale thing wasn't working. And it seems to be it's filled with stuff, and we have to get that out before anything happens. Okay, anything else? So the applicant shall address any and all remaining staff or interdepartmental issues.
Okie dokie. Everybody happy with this?
Happy enough to go to bed.
Okie dokie. Katie, you think we hit all the big issues on this?
Hope so, yeah.
Okay. All right. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Levy has seconded. Mr. Lowe,
Aye.
you convinced? Okay,
I have
Mr.
to, I have to qualify my aye.
Mr. Yeski,
Aye.
Mr. McRae.
Aye.
Albin is also aye, and with that, the motion passes 5-0.
I'm sorry, who seconded?
Wait a minute.
Levy,
Levy,
Who was the fifth vote?
Yeah.
Levy.
Did Peter Levy vote?
yes,
No.
he,
Yeah, I
You
think,
only got 4 votes, I think.
yeah. I think you gotta-
Yeski, Levy, Lowe, McRae, and me.
Did, Peter, did you vote?
You-
Yes.
no,
Aye.
you said Yeski, McRae, Alvin, Lowe. So you said it in that order. So you do have to call on Levy.
Levy,
Aye.
okay.
Thank you.
God, it's bad at 10 o'clock, isn't it? Is it only 10 o'clock? Yes, only
No.
10 o'clock.
And
Time for the
10:09.
second set.
All right, ready for the second set? All right.
Are we done?
Yeah, sorry about how punchy we all got, Katie. We were really punchy tonight. Except for Barilak and Yeski, they haven't been punchy at all. The
No,
rest of us got punchy.
We called each other early and made a vow not to be punchy.
Not to
today.
be punchy. The
Work, too.
two of them weren't punchy at all, but the rest of us were like, all right, it's been grand.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Night.
See you soon.
See you soon.